Every business requires a favorable place to flourish, like a seed that needs watering, like a plant needs the sun. We in Latvia have grown to know
who I can almost see. It's a big plant. Ladies and gentlemen, I am under strict instructions from Peters Blumbergs to start at 9 o'clock today. And when Peters tells me to do something, I do it. Those of us who haven't done what he says, we've learned the hard way to listen to him. So that's why we're kicking off today, so promptly at 9 o'clock. Welcome to this, the 9th World Latvian Economics and Innovation Forum. The previous one, the 8th, obviously, was held 2 years ago, also here in the Ziedonis Hall at the Latvian National Library. And it's great to see so many of you here, new faces, older faces, experienced faces. I'm sure there are some people who've been to all of the World Latvian Economic and Innovation Forums here. So I'm Daunis Auers. I'm a professor at the University of Latvia, director of the Laser think tank, and I will be your sort of moderator today, guiding you gently through the day's proceedings. Now, part of my moderation duties are to give you technical information, and hopefully the next slide will provide this technical information on translation. So the forum is held in both English and Latvian, but as an investment-oriented forum with a heavy emphasis on the English. But here in the first half, we will have primarily speeches in Latvian. So translation is offered here in the Ziedonis Hall all day long, and you can access it via this QR code, which you can see here. So I've always wanted to be an Air Baltic stewardess, so kind of heading here. Please direct your attention over there. So it's on your mobile phone. We suggest that you use the Wi-Fi here in the hall, and I think the details are over there on the right-hand side. Select the language you want it to be translated to, and then you can read the translation via your phone or listen to it in your headphones. And every person under the age of 25 seems to walk around with headphones stuck to their neck, so I presume that's not a problem for you. Without further ado, having introduced this technical information, I will now move to the side and I will introduce our host for the day, the terrifying Peters Blumbergs. Peter, please. Peters, of course, is the president of the World Federation of Free Latvians. Peter.
I'm not sure where these jokes about me being terrifying is from. Maybe I'm terrified, but actually I'm from the Midwest in the United States, and there's this phrase called Midwest nice, that people from the people from New York aren't that friendly, and that people from the West Coast are very mellow, but Midwesterners are just nice. So I don't know, we disregard what Daunis was saying, but about me. But Your Excellencies from the Latvian government, Your Excellencies from the International Diplomatic Corps, forum supporters, friends of PBLA, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the World Latvian Economics and Innovations Forum 2025. This conference brings together Latvians from the diaspora with their counterparts in the Latvian business community. Our panels will feature representatives from leading international firms, CEOs of significant enterprises, as well as international investors. Finally, we will have, as you know, leading government officials providing their policy input and leadership. The conference attendees here today come from 28 different countries, and we have 22 embassies represented. I think Daunis will have some slides with some of this demographic information, and maybe right now he's not happy that I'm getting into this data, but since I'm speaking first, he's just gonna have to follow. As you may recall, 2 years ago, we met here for the forum, and that was also during the National Latvian Song Festival. And this year we are meeting during the Youth Song Festival. PLAIF has sought to be associated with these great events because this is one of the things that the Latvians do best: organize amazing festivals showcasing unique talents and incredible creativity. Let's be inspired today by the joyous mood of those who are dancing and singing in town. But also, let's be inspired by our fellow countrymen and women who have achieved great business success. Let's be proud of them and try to emulate them. Let's be inspired by the recent stunning Latvian successes on the world stage, such as the film Flow and its production team, which is here today, which stormed the Oscars this year. Some of PBLA's and PLAIF's longtime contacts and friends couldn't be with us here today because they're in Aluksne for Army Reserve training. We also salute the members of the Latvian Armed Forces for their sacrifice. And let's also be inspired by them today. And of course, we salute the Ukrainians for their amazing sacrifices. PBLA is proud to have just this week facilitated a major $100,000 donation from American businessman Martin Šputens to the Names Fund to support Ukrainian soldiers. Latvia is committed to major investment in the military in the coming years, and this will be a major topic for the forum today. As Daunis mentioned, this will be a bilingual event, so I'm going to switch over to Latvian for a moment. This will also, I suppose, be a stress test for the translation devices. Bet PBLA vārdā atkal pateicos visiem klātesošiem un visiem mūsu runātājiem, dalībniekiem, bet šī mirklī es arī gribēju īpaši pateikties mūsu sadarbības partneriem un sponsoriem. Mēs uz šo projektu esam strādājuši vairākus mēnešus, gandrīz vai gadu varētu teikt, un mūsu galvenais partners ir ārlietu ministrija, vēstniece Zanda Grauze ir bijusi klāt šitam ceļam, un viņi droši vien būs laimīgi, ka viņai nav jāskatās uz mūsu sejām Zoom sarunās katru trešdienu. Un arī īpaši gribēju pateikties ārlietu ministrijai Bražai par viņas atbalstu, un arī gribēju pieminēt, ka bijušais ārlietu ministrs Rinkēvičs arī vienmēr bija liels PLAIF atbalstītājs. Tad arī mūsu sponsori šodien ir Lija, Rīgas pilsēta un arī NVA. Un viņu vadītāji Simpsons kundze un Jāgera kundze ir šeit, paldies. Un Mērs Kleinbergs varbūt tikai tagad pirmo reizi saprot, ka viņš arī ir sponsors, bet paldies viņam arī. Rēķins varbūt bija samaksāts iepriekš, bet tomēr arī es gribēju uzsvērt to, ka PBLām ir arī, kā jūs varbūt zināt, diezgan spēcīgs pamatkapitāls, un mēs arī esam devuši tikpat daudz kā jebkur valsts iestāde, lai šo projektu īstenot. Un tad es arī gribēju ātri pateikties mūsu citiem sponsoriem, Amerikas Latviešu apvienībai, Latvijas Universitātes fondam un AmChamam. Tad, I think with that, I am going to finish up. If those of you who don't speak Latvian and couldn't understand what I said, what I explained was all the secrets to business success to the Latvian people, and so you'll just have to hear about it from them later. Okay, well, all right, so I think I'm finished up with everything. I'll be back at the end to say a few more thank yous, mainly to our team. That'll be at the end of the day. And so everyone have a great conference, and thanks again for being here.
Okay, thank you, Peter. So for the next half hour or so, this wonderful Ziedonis Hall is really the center of government and governance in Latvia, as our next panelists, who will each be making a speech, are the leadership of this fantastic country. And I will invite them onto the stage one by one now, and begin with the President of the Republic of Latvia, Edgars Rinkēvičs. Your Excellency. Thank you, and you can take the first seat here, Mr. President, and then we will invite all the other speakers. Daiga Mieringa, the Speaker of the Latvian Parliament, the Saima, please. Oh. The Prime Minister of Latvia, who is hidden somewhere behind the pot plant. There we go. Evika Siliņa. And the Foreign Minister, Baiba Braža, please. And last but not least, the newly elected fresh mayor of Riga, Viesturs Kleinbergs. Okay, and the opening words then of this part will be given to His Excellency, the President of Latvia, Edgars Rinkēvičs. Mr. President.
Labrīt, mīļie draugi, cienījamā Saeimas priekšsēdētājas kundze, cienījamā ministra prezidents kundze, ministrs kundze, prezidenta Levita, ekscelences. Man tiešām ir liels prieks būt atkal kopā ar jums šeit, šajā fórumā, katrus 2 gadus apspriest daudz jautājumus. Bet man jāsaka arī, ka šis fórums ir daudz devis mums visiem. Gan tiem, kas dzīvo šeit Latvijā, gan arī tiem, kas dzīvo un strādā un atcerās Latviju ārpus Latvijas. Viena laba lieta ir, ka, piemēram, Blumberg kungs ir sadarbībā ar ārlietu ministriju labi apgūst diplomātijas mākslu. Viņš uzteica Bražas kundzi, viņš neaizmirsa mani, un es centīšos arī mazliet sacensties diplomātijā un teikt, ka patiesību sakot, bez pašas diasporas, bez Pasaules brīvo latviešu, bez reģionālo latviešu apvienību līdzdalības, bez valdības Saeimas un ārlietu ministrijas sadarbības atbalsta un vēlmes miedarboties, es domāju, šāds fórums nebūtu, un nebūtu arī iespēja mums savstarpēji sadarboties. Tā kā mēs esam daudz runātāji, un jums būs priekšā ļoti plašas un interesantas diskusijas, es mēģināšu tikai 2-3 vārdos ieskicēt, kas, manuprāt, ir ļoti svarīgi šobrīd valstī darāms, un kur es pilnīgi droši redzu jūsu kā aktīvus tautiešu atbalstu. Mēs visi gribam redzēt mūsu Latviju drošu, mēs visi gribam redzēt mūsu Latviju kuplu, un mēs visi gribam redzēt mūsu Latviju izglītotu un turīgu. Un šie 3 uzdevumi – valsts drošība, demografiskā attīstība, konkurētspēja un izglītība – ir tie uzdevumi, par kuriem mēs daudz runājam šeit Latvijā, par kuriem runā gan Saeimā, gan valdībā, par kuriem runā arī nebūtu ne šajā vienkāršajā budžeta sastādīšanas gaitā. Bet es domāju, ka mēs arī varam sadarboties, lai šos mērķus kopā veicinātu. Ja mēs runājam par drošību, mūsu tautieši ārpus Latvijas vienmēr ir bijuši ļoti aktīvi, skaidrojot Latvijas un Baltijas drošības situāciju, runājot ar saviem politiskajiem priekšstāvjiem, vai tie būtu parlamentu vai valdību pārstāvi, skaidrojot, ko nozīmē Krievijas agresija Ukrainā. Par to es gribu jums teikt lielu paldies, bet es gribu arī aicināt turpināt sadarboties. Es zinu, ka daudz jums to dara un darīs. Es zinu, ka daudz no jums meklē iespējas, kā vēl palīdzēt. Mēs esam pilnīgi noteikti gatavi strādāt tālāk, jo ir skaidrs, ka šī drošības situācija tik ātri nemainīsies un ka mums būs jāatvēl ne tikai finanšu resursi 5% apmērā aizsardzībai un drošībai, ne tikai jāveido un jāstiprina spējas, ne tikai jāstrādā ar mūsu NATO sabiedrotajiem, bet arī jāskaidro šī drošības situācija, pastāvīgi jānotur šī situācija arī tajās mītnes valstīs, kurās jūs esat. Otra lieta – demogrāfija. Jūs pažināt, kā strādā demogrāfija, te es īpaši daudz nevienu nemācīšu, nestāstīšu, bet mums ir svarīgi, ka šī tēma, šī prioritāte pašreiz ir valdības, Saeimas, visas sabiedrības uzmanības centrā. Un, visbeidzot, izglītība un konkurētspēja. Tas ir tās lietas, par kurām jūs visvairāk visticamāk runāsiet. Man ir prieks, ka mums jau ir izdevies pavirzīt daudzus sadarbības projektus, piesaistīt investīcijas, Jūs esat bijuši gan aktīvi palīdzot šīs investīcijas piesaistot, gan paši strādājot. Es domāju, ka šobrīd Latvijai ir svarīgi maksimāli investēt un attīstīt izglītību, zinātni. Pavisam drīz sāks darboties mākslīgā intelekta centrs, pavisam drīz, es domāju, mēs redzēsim diezgan labas ziņas un daudz attīstības aizsardzības industrijā. Tās ir tās lietas, kuras šobrīd mēs redzam kā svarīgus attīstības pamatmērķus, bet tas nenozīmē, ka ar to ir jāaprobežojas. Es ceru, ka šīs diskusijas laikā būs jaunas idejas, būs jaunas iespējas, būs jauni kontakti. Tas pats attiecās arī uz izglītību. Mums ir daudz jauniešu, kas dodas studēt ārpus Latvijas. Mēs esam priecīgi arī redzēt daudz jauniešu, kas brauc studēt Latvijā, kas mācās. Es ļoti gribētu cerēt, ka visi tie, kas šobrīd studē ārpus Latvijas, atgriezīsies Latvijā. Kā padarīt mūsu izglītības sistēmu konkurētspējīgāku? Kā padarīt to interesantāku? Kādām idejām padalīties, lai tie jaunieši, kas šobrīd ir ārpus Latvijas, braukt atpakaļ, lai jūs varbūt kādreiz domātu, lai dotu pienesumu. Tas ir vēl viens no tiem uzdevumiem. Pietiekami daudz lietas. Ministrs prezidents, tad, kad mēs ar viņu te mazliet apmainījāmies jokiem, teica, ka viņa ar šausmām gaidot manu uzrunu, jo tur jau noteikti būšot kaut kas tāds, kas atkal valdībai radīšot galvas sāpes. Es ceru, ka es esmu noturējies rāmjos, bet es tiešām domāju, ka mēs esam pietiekami maza tauta, pietiekami stipra tauta, un pats galvenais, lai sasniegtu šos mērķus, mums ir sadarboties. Paldies jums! Veiksmīgu dienu un baudiet arī jauniešu dziesmu svētkus. Tur tās enerģijas un spāri ir tik daudz, ka pietiks nākamajiem 5 gadiem.
Thank you, Mr. President. We now switch to the Latvian Parliament and the Speaker of Latvijas Saima, Daiga Mieringa.
Augsti godātais valsts prezidenta kungs, ļoti cienījamā ministra prezidents kundze, ekscelences, dāmas un kungi, cienījamie klātesošie. Man ir liels gods šodien uzrunāt jūs kārtējā Pasaules Latviešu ekonomikas un inovāciju fórumā, kas veltīts mūsu konkurētspējas veicināšanai un diasporas iesaistē ekonomikas attīstībā. Un arī mums ir vairāki izaicinājumi. Nākamā gadā drošības un aizsardzības jomā mēs plānojam tērēt vairāk nekā 4% no iekšzemes koprodukta, pamazām virzoties pretīm Hāgas samitā nospraustajiem 5%. Mums ir jābūt gudriem, un šie papildus resursi drošības un aizsardzības nozarē jāspēj pārvērst arī ekonomiskajā izaugsmē, stiprinot mūsu aizsardzības industriju. Vienlaikus arī industrijai ir lieli izaicinājumi. Tehnoloģijas nepārtraukti mainās, un tehnoloģijas arī ir jāattīsta, un tajā jāiegulda resursi, īpaši pētniecībā un izmēģinājumos. Par to pārliecinājos arī esot Ukrainā, kur šogad viesojos 2 reizes. Praktisks piemērs no frontes, tie droni, kas bija efektīvi gada sākumā, vairs nesasniedza vajadzīgos mērķus pēc pāris mēnešiem. Nepārtraukta pielāgošanās un spēja sadarboties ir atslēgas vārds. Līdzīgi kā kaķim filmā Straume. Šis ir vadmotīvs arī šogad izveidotajam mākslīgā intelekta centram Latvijā. Strauji augošajā un mainīgajā mākslīgā intelekta jomā mēs šodien nevaram izveidot likumu, kas atrunātu nianses gadu desmitiem uz priekšu, bet tā vietā mēs esam izveidojuši platformu nozares attīstībai un izcilības veicināšanai un aicinam arī jūs izmantot šīs iespējas. Praktiski risinājumi un biznesa attīstība vispirms, birokrātija un likumi pēc tam. Aicinam diasporas latviešus uzņēmējus iesaistīties un aktīvi izmantot šo platformu. Tiešākais veids, kā diasporai iesaistīties Latvijas politikā, ir dalība vēlēšanās. Joprojām diasporas dalība tajās ir salīdzinoši zema. Vēlēšana sistēma ir vēlēšana sistēmā ir jāveicina gan piekļuve, gan iesaiste, gan arī, protams, elastība. Vēlētājiem ārvalstīs ir jābūt tādām pašām iespējām balsot kā vēlētājiem Latvijā. Ir jāattīsta pasta balsošana, jāsekmē iecirkņu veidošana ārvalstīs bez liekiem birokrātiskiem šķēršļiem. Tāpat ir ļoti svarīgi, ka katram diasporas vēlētājam ir jābūt iespēja balsot par to vēlēšanu apgabalu, no kura viņš nāk vai ar ko visvairāk saistīts. Diemžēl šie manis virzītie priekšlikumi šogad vēlēšanu sistēmas attīstībai Saeimā pagaidām nav guvuši nepieciešamo atbalstu. Esošā vēlēšana sistēma izveidota tālajā 1995. gadā. 30 gadu laikā būtiski mainījušās gan pieejamās tehnoloģijas, gan pati diaspora. Mums jāsako laikam līdzi, lai ikvienam process būtu ērtāks un pieejamāks. Vēl viena lieta, ko gribu uzsvērt, aizvien aktuāla tēma ir sabiedrības noturība. Mēs redzam, ka nedemokrātiskie spēki austrumos cenšas ietekmēt vēlēšanas Eiropā. Dezinformācija, klaji meli, faktu sagrozīšana, sabotāžas, lai sētu bailes. Latvijā tā ir ikdiena jau kopš neatkarības atgūšanas, un attīstoties manipulāciju tehnoloģijām, tās tikai pieņemas spēkā. Šajā kontekstā es aicinu mūsu diasporu aktīvi iesaistīties un skaidrot mūsu vēsturi, mūsu politiku, kā arī neļaut nomelnot mūsu valsti savās mītnes zemēs, gan vienkāršas ikdienas diskusijās, gan lielos atklātos fórumos. Izglītots latvietis vienmēr ir bijis spēcīgākais Latvijas demokrātijas balsts. Noslēgumā es vēlos pateikties plašajai Latvijas diasporai pasaulē par lielo ieguldījumu, ko jūs ikdienā sniedzat mūsu zemes attīstībā un noturībā. Mūsdienu digitālais laikmets sniedz jaunas iespējas strādāt vienā pasaules malā un fiziski uzturēties pavisam citā kontinentā. Aicinu to arī izmantot. Latvija esam mēs visi, un Latvijas panākumi ir atkarīgi no mums katra. Liels paldies, lai jums jauks un ražants fórums. Paldies!
Thank you, Mrs. Speaker. And now, Latvia's Prime Minister, Evika Siliņa.
Dear guests and augstu godātais valsts prezidenta kungs, Levita kungs, ļoti cienījamā Saeimas priekšsēdētājas kundze, ministri, mēra kungs, ekscelences, vēstnieki un godātie klātesošie. Man tiešām ir prieks jūs redzēt šodien laikā, kad mums Rīgā, tepat Latvijā, notiek tāda ļoti atraktīva jauniešu un skolnieku dziesmu un deju svētku norise. Un es aicinu tiešām ikvienu arī izbaudīt šo patriotisko sajūtu un apmeklēt Vērmaņdārzu, jo tā patiešām ir mūsu latviskā identitāte, tās ir mūsu vērtības un tas ir mūsu spēks. Un vēl jau vairāk, tad, kad dzied un dejo mūsu bērni un jaunieši, tad tiešām mēs visi varam justies, ka mums ir īsta un skaista nākotne. Man kā valdības vadītājai, protams, ir svarīgi ieguldīt Latvijas nākotnē, mūsu cilvēku kapitālā un mūsu bērnu prasmēs un zināšanās. Un klausoties arī valsts prezidentu un Saeimas priekšsēdētāju, skaidrs, ka laikam ir pagājuši tie laiki, kad Latvijā katra augstākā amatpersona runāja kaut ko citu. Jo principā jāatzīst, ka mēs visi esam diezgan uz vienas nots, kas tad mums īsti būtu jādara, lai mēs Latviju padarītu stiprāku, lai mēs Latviju padarītu konkurētspējīgāku un lai mēs izceltos pasaules arī tādā kartē. Un tāpēc arī es kā valdības vadītāji uzskatu, ka izmaiņas izglītībā ir vienas no svarīgākajām. Tās mēs arī virzam, lai mūsu nākamās paaudzes arī varētu pielāgoties tiem mainīgajiem apstākļiem, kādos mēs katrs no šodien dzīvojam. Un ir ļoti svarīgi, ka ne tikai jaunieši, bet arī jau karjeras tādā varbūt vai dzīves briedumā mēs esošie vēl varētu atrast spēju mūža izglītoties, un tāpēc arī mums notiek diezgan liels pārmaiņas arī mūža izglītībā. Latvija jau tagad ir digitāli attīstīta valsts, un daudzās jomās mēs esam līderi Eiropā un arī citviet pasaulē. Un es nezinu, vai tiešām jums strādā tas tulkošanas rīks, bet katrā ziņā tulkošanas rīku ziņā mēs patiešām esam izcili, un mūsu kompānijas šobrīd strādā arī visas Eiropas līmeņa projektos. Un par to mums ir tiešām jālepojas, un mums ir jāstāst, ka mums ir tāda uzņēmuma kā Tilde, kas spēj tiešām piedāvāt ārkārtīgi unikālus projektus. Un mans mērķis, protams, arī esot starptautiskajās vizītēs, ir šo pozīciju stiprināt. Šogad, dibinājām mākslīgā intelekta centru. Tas ir kaut kas jauns Latvijā, kurā var piedalīties gan privātā puse, gan valsts. Un dosim šo iespēju sadarboties abām šīm jomām kopā, jo es ticu, ka tikai tā mēs varam arī šajā mākslīgā intelekta jomā panākt straujāku attīstību. Es personīgi vadu lielo stratēģisko un nozīmīgo investīciju projektu koordinācijas padome, un mēs esam izveidojuši zaļo koridoru lielajām investīcijām un arī militārai industrijai. Un kāpēc? Jo es uzskatu, tas jau tika pieminēts arī prezidenta runā un arī spīkers runā, ka drošība mums ir svarīga, bet lai mēs drošības ziņā varētu straujāk attīstīties, mums ir vajadzīgs to izdarīt ātri. Tāpēc zaļais koridors šādām investīcijām Latvijā ir. Jā, mēs arī vēl mācamies, mums nav visas iemaņas, kā attīstīt militāro industriju, bet mums ir liela griba un mums ir tiešām atvērtas durvis valdības visaugstākajos līmeņos to arī paveikt. Jo jau tagad Latvijas droni, kvantu sensori, mākslīgais intelekts, 5G risinājumi tiek testēti reālos apstākļos, Sēlijā, Ādažos un arī Ukrainā. Un mēs patiešām konkurējam arī NATO valstu vidū ar mūsu augstajām tehnoloģijām. Un Latvijas eksportspēja šajā ziņā arī pieaug, un mums ir tiešām unikāla iespēja iekļūt šajās globālajās piegāžu ķēdēs. Tā kā es arī uzskatu, ka drošībai un attīstībai ir jāiet roku rokā, un mēs esam salīdzinoši neliela valsts, tad mūsu priekšrocība šobrīd ir tā, ka mēs spējam rīkoties gan ātri un efektīvi. Tāpēc viena no arī tām prioritātēm, ko mēs valdībā šobrīd darām, ir mazināt birokrātiskos šķēršļus un mazināt ar mērķi uzlabot Latvijas konkurētspēju. Mēs sākām ar nekustamā īpašuma jomu un būvniecības nozari, jo es redzu, ka tieši ar šīm nozarēm sākot, mēs varam būtiski palielināt attīstību un piesaistīt vairāk investīcijas arī Latvijā. Un aizvadītajā gadā mēs arī reformējām Latvijas investīciju un attīstības aģentūru, vairāk fokusējoties tiešām uz investīciju piesaist, ne tik daudz uz papīriem. Valdības paveikto drošības stiprināšanā un birokrātijas mazināšanā, jāsaka, jau arī atzinīgi vērtē arī ārvalstu investoru padome, kas Latvijas paveikto īpaši šogad izcēla Baltijas valstu vidū kā veselīgāko vidi investīcijām šobrīd, un gandrīz dubultoja arī mūsu rādītāju indeksu, kas ir labvēlīgs investīcijām. Un Latvija tiešām kļūst arvien pievilcīgāka kā investīciju galamērķis, jo arī kreditēšanas apjomi pēdējos 2 gados ir pieauguši un jau šogad sasniedz 10%. Un to, ja jums būs iespēja uzklausīt Latvijas bankas vadītāju, viņš varēs pastāstīt, kā mēs to esam panākuši ar mērķtiecīgu darbu, arī ar daudz dažādām politiskām, nevienkāršām likuma izmaiņām, bet es ticu, ka arī mēs ar šām likuma izmaiņām tiešām piesaistot vairāk investīcijas, bankas arī ļoti pozitīvi uz šo reaģē. Par jums. Latviešu pasaulē ieguldījums ir ļoti nozīmīgs. Un ar saviem kontaktiem, pieredzi un atbalstu starptautiskajā vidē jūs arī īpaši palīdzat Latvijai. Tāpēc es vēlos pateikt no šīs skatuves paldies Pēterim Blumbergam un Pasaules Latviešu ekonomikas un inovāciju fóruma visai komandai, kā arī diasporas organizācijām par darbu, ko jūs veicat Latvijas labā. Un šodien zālē es redzu daudzus no jums, un man ir prieks par tik spēcīgu latviešu diasporu. Un es vēlos arī teikt, ka Latvija lepojas arī ar mūsu sasniegumiem ne tikai Latvijā, bet arī ar jūsu sasniegumiem ārvalstīs. Un paldies jums šodien, kas esat šeit atbraukuši, sanākuši, un lai ir daudz jaunas satikšanās, kas arī veicinās jaunus investīciju projektus nākotnē. Paldies!
Thank you, Prime Minister. And now I'd like to invite to the podium Latvia's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Baiba Braža.
Labdien, latvieši, prezidenta kungs, Levita kungs, premjere, Saeimas spīkere, kolēģi. Šodien ir būtiska diena, šodien ir mūsu bruņoto spēku dzimšanas diena, un kā prezidents šodien ierakstīja, paldies viņiem, ka sargājat mūs, bet drošība nav tikai bruņoto spēku lieta, tā ir mūsu visu spēku lieta. Un pasakot paldies PBLA un pasakot paldies visiem, kas ir šodienas pasākumu organizējuši un kas ir rūpējušies par latviešu izdzīvošanu pasaulē un organizēšanos pasaulē okupācijas gados. Šodien, es domāju, mums tā sajūta, ka drošība ir mums vissvarīgākā, ir arī jāintegrē ikvienā sajūtā. Un tas nozīmē, protams, joprojām būt gan politiski aktīviem, uz vērtībām orientētiem, ņemt praktisku dalību, vai tās ir rezervistu apmācības, vai zemesardze, vai militārās medicīnas, vai kā citādāk apmācībās, bet arī tiešām balstīties satversmē noteiktajās vērtībās, par ko ir mūsu valsts un par ko ir mūsu tauta. Un tauta mainās. Šodien mēs redzam, ka diaspora vairs nav tikai tas, kas dzīvo ārpusē. Mūsu tauta ir vienota. Ir pasaules brīvie latvieši. Mēs visi esam pasaules brīvie latvieši. Tauta ir mobila. Un mēs redzam, ka pagājušā gadā Latvijā atgriezās vairāk latviešu uz dzīvi nekā izbrauca no Latvijas. Un skaitļos tie ir 9963, kas atgriezās, un izbrauca 9651. Un lielākā daļa no tiem, kas atgriezās, ir tieši darba spējīgajā vecumā, no 15 līdz 64 gadiem, gandrīz 8000. Un šis atspoguļo, protams, to iespēju mums visiem nepieņemt, ka ir dzīve tikai Latvijā vai ka ir dzīve tikai ārzemēs. Mēs varam testēt, mēs varam mainīties, mēs varam iespējot savus gan izglītības, gan darba iespējas ārpus Latvijas, bet arī Latvijā. Un tā ir jaunā normalitāte. Vienlaikus, protams, mums jāapzinās, ka latviešu tauta un Latvijas tauta vienmēr ir bijusi augsti pašorganizēta. No pirmajām organizāciju veidošanās dienām, vai tas bija Tērbata, vai Pēterburga, vai Latvijā, vai Latvijas centrālā padome okupācijas gados, vai Trimdā, Batuns, PBLA, vai šeit Latvijā Rastnieku savienība, dziesmu svētku organizētāji, dažādas citas grupas. Vienmēr tā ir bijusi augsti pašorganizēta vienība. Tas nenozīmē, ka tas ir saistīts ar kaut kādu normatīvismu, bet tā apziņa, ka neviens cits mūsu vietā par mums lietas nedarīs. Un tāpēc arī šobrīd es gribētu teikt, gan tie, kas dzīvo ārzemēs uz īsu vai garāku laiku, gan tie, kas dzīvo Latvijā, ka mums šī pašorganizēšanās nevalstiskajās organizācijās, interešu organizācijās, sevis pārstāvība, politiski sevis pārstāvība, ekonomiski ir tikpat svarīgi, kā jebkuros krīzes gados tas ir bijis, vai tas ir 18. vai 40. vai okupācijas gadi, vai 80. gadu beigu, 90. gadu sākums. Un šeit uzdevums, protams, saglabāt latvietību, valodu, latviešu tautu, veltīt zināšanas un resursus Latvijas labklājības izaugsmē vienā vai otrā veidā, bet arī būt aktīviem valstīs, kur dzīvojat. Skaidri atbalstot vajadzības tērēt aizsardzībai arī tajās valstīs, atbalstot vajadzību par Ukrainas drošību un viennozīmīgi iestājoties par zināšanām par Latviju. Bet atgriežoties pie šodienas virsmērķa Latvijas un vislatviešu ekonomiskā un investīcija potenciālu. Kā jau premjera teica, ārvalstu investori Latvijā ir apmierināti ar darbu šeit, ir apmierināti ar valdības darbu, un to varu apliecināt savās tikšanās ar zinātniekiem, ar uzņēmējiem, ar universitāšu pārstāvjiem. Izcili produkti, izcilas inovācijas, zināšanas, piemērošanās. Vienlaiks mēs jau nenovērtējam, esam pieticīgi par saviem objektīvajiem sasniegumiem. Un tas ir jāmaina. Mēs esam sekmīga valsts. Mēs esam Latvija, mēs varam. Un tāpēc jautājums visiem, kā mēs varam labāk lepoties ar sevi. Un lepoties pamatoti, katrs savā jomā, stāstīt, darboties, lemt, izgudrot un stāstīt par to. Un no ārlietu ministrijas un vēstniecības puses, nē, tā nav tikai mūsu tautiešu glābšana krīzes situācijās no cietumiem vai no citām problēmām. Tieši vēstniecības valstīs, kas ir ārpus Eiropas Savienības, ir nodrošinājušas vislielāko tirdzniecības pieaugumu, eksporta pieaugumu, jo tas ir bijis apzināts darbs. Un mēs to turpināsim. Jo tas ir tas, ko dara ārlietu dienests. Drošība, ekonomika un rūpes par cilvēkiem. Un mēs to varam, mēs stāstam, bet mēs visi to varam. Mēs neesam izolēti no visiem mums. Mēs esam brīvi, mēs esam latvieši, mēs esam pasauli. Paldies!
Thank you, Foreign Minister. And now last but certainly not least, the newly elected Mayor of Riga, Viesturs Kleinbergs.
Labrīt, ekscelences, labrīt tautieši no Latvijas un arī no ārvalstīm. Un, kā Blumberg kungs teica, man kā jaunistabtam mēram daudz lietas es uzzinu no jauna par sponsorēšanu, un daudz lietas man arī jāapgūst no jauna. Un taisnība bija arī ministra prezidents kundzei, ka pēc šādiem 4 runātājiem īpaši daudz jau neatliks man, ko vēl pateikt. Tāpēc es izmantošu iespēju, zinot arī, ka lielākā daļa no jums noteikti runā angļu valodā daudz labāk nekā es. Tālāk runāt angļu valodā. Vismaz kaut ko vēl papildus apgūšu. Before coming here, I asked myself a simple question. What do I care most about Latvia? I thought of my 3 children, all born here, all grown up in a country that is free. For them, Europe has always been open. No visa, no currency exchange, and if they wish, they could study anywhere in the world. And yes, I don't share the same life experience as them, but I was raised to believe that freedom is something you must protect. I've spent 30 years working in social services, fighting for the idea that everyone deserves a fair start, a safe home, a chance to grow. That experience taught me something else too. Freedom is not only about what we are allowed to do. It's about what we can achieve when we build a society where people can study, work, and plan their lives with the same confidence as in any strong Western democracy. So my vision as a mayor of Riga is simple. Riga must be a city where people can build a future, where opportunity is not a reason to leave, but a reason to stay or to return. Every one of us here have their own story. Some of you left as a children, others were born abroad. Perhaps your parents or grandparents emigrated. Maybe you went abroad later for studying, for work, or to raise a family. Each story is different. but all of you carry something that connects you here. This week, we welcome people from all over the world to Riga for the School Youth Song and Dance Festival. The city feels full of energy and full of hope. You can sense that something important is being passed from one generation to the next. That same spirit is what we want to build into the everyday life of this city. Riga is changing for better. We are working to make it easier to live here, to work here, to create something new. Good schools, safe streets, a stronger public transport system. We are ready to welcome you as a partners of Riga's future. We are also ready to welcome your businesses. If you are an investor, if you lead a company, or if you want to build something new, Riga is ready. We want you to see this city as a place where ideas can grow, where your investment makes a difference. And we don't need to copy anyone else. Riga has its own character, its own pace, its own pride. But we are open to learning, to changing, to moving forward together with you. You are here now, and if something about Riga feels good, hold on to that. Because this doesn't have to be a visit. It can be the beginning of something more. I thank you for what you have already done for Latvia, keeping ties, staying engaged, showing that distance doesn't matter, and now I invite you to shape Riga's future together. Have a great day in Forum and have a great time in Riga and Latvia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think on behalf of all the participants here today, thank you so much to our panelists, our national leaders who all found time in their extremely busy calendars to come here to the National Library and to give us these inspirational words to kick off the conference. So as they exit the stage, I'd like us all to give them another round of applause. Okay, so we now go into the second part of the conference where we begin with a macroeconomic overview of where we are. But before that, there are some technical things which I need to tell you. So Peter had previewed the fact that we have a little map that shows that there are participants from at least 28 different countries in the world here today, representing many different styles. I personally was quite shocked this morning to encounter a friend of mine wearing a rather lovely suit with a pair of white sneakers. I didn't realize 50-year-old men could get away with that, but congratulations, Martin, you're breaking the barriers for all of us. 55, thank you. And Martin, she is, despite the sneakers, one of the business leaders amongst us, innovators, policymakers, ambassadors, and so on. It's a truly great crowd we've gathered today. There are about 500 people here in the morning with about 100 joining us after lunch. So this next part of the forum will take place in English again. And we just want to show that translation slide again, but this time it should be in... oh, okay, it's still in English. I thought it would be in Latvian. But anyway, in case you need to switch to a Latvian translation from the English presentations and discussion that we have coming up here. I think actually I have to quickly check to see whether we have, yes, the next slide is about B2B networking breaks. You have the possibility to hook up, in a business sense, I should say. That primarily is directed at my niece Selga. So these are business B2B contacts. The tool is called B2 Match, and you can register through the link which you see here, or the QR code. You can quickly set up a profile, and the idea is that you schedule a 5-minute meeting with fellow attendees. There are meeting tables downstairs in the conference center where you can set up the meetings. I urge you to limit these initial meetings at 5 minutes, and then move on somewhere else if there's more you want to chat about or discuss, so that other people can also use the tables for these initial connections. So keep the meetings, please, short, with the purpose of helping you connect quickly. There is one last technical thing, which I think is also sort of aimed more at the younger people amongst us. And I mean younger people, Martin. Wearing white sneakers doesn't make you young. One last technical thing. If you want to share your experience online, please use the hashtag WLAIF2025, which we see here. And if you're using Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or X, please tag us so we can see what's happening and drive more people to the conference, hopefully. So, that is the technical information. I think I've managed to communicate that effectively. Now, unfortunately, I seem to have carried on a little bit long, because for our next speaker, who is the governor of the Bank of Latvia, and by far most influential governor of a central bank in the Baltic states and one of the most influential in Europe, I had prepared a long introduction, primarily based on his days as a young student in London, where I did a deep dive. But Martin, unfortunately, I don't have time to deliver this extended survey of your misspent youth in London. Instead, I'll just say that Martin is our governor, previously worked as the chief economist for Swedbank, PhD from Queen Mary. I think it was still then Queen Mary in Westfield, just Queen Mary, at the University of Latvia. And as you can see, he's come here to stop me going into any more personal details. So anyway, I'm very pleased to introduce, there is no better person to give us a macro overview of where we are than my friend Martin Kazaks, the governor of the Bank of Latvia.
Labrīt, prieks jūs visus redzēt. Ekscelences, Levita kungs, ministri, kas vēl ir palikuši, dāmas un kungi, brīvie latvieši. Manuprāt, brīvie latvieši ir kā mums jājūtas. Tas ir pienākums, bet tā ir atbildība un prieks. Tātad cenšamies ar to arī dzīvot veiksmīgi tālāk. Let me switch to English. Thanks for having me, and I'm happy to see you all. And I have this very brief, I think, 15 minutes maximum, something like that, risking that no, it's 10 minutes. Okay. Downish overspent my time. So I'll try to be quick. But a couple of words about the macro situation, but in a bit of kind of playful mode. And as you can see, yet another reference to the flow. You don't get that many Oscars, okay? And of the Baltic states, we are the leaders here. We just did it, and thanks to the team. And I think that's another way to really realize that we are good. We are really good, but of course we can do better. Let me cover a couple of things before the discussion kicks off. And I'll talk a bit about where do we stand, what are the changes globally, because the situation, of course, has been dramatically shifted also by geopolitical changes. And then, what could we do to improve our standing? Okay, The first thing, I think there is a moment to be proud of. We've got the fish, okay? And in Latvian, there's a very nice saying, "Mais ēdājam pakaļ neiet," which approximately translates, as you can see, the bread doesn't follow either. So you have to work. You have to work hard, to benefit. And we've done so. And if one takes a look at the standard measure of GDP per capita, Latvian red, it has been quite a run. If one compares the last 30 years, our convergence in terms of living standards with respect to Europe, we've seen 42 percentage point rise. It's a tremendous run. It's a tremendous success. But unfortunately, I have to say, but our neighbors in Estonia, Lithuania, and Lithuanians over the last 10 years have done a fantastic job. Okay? So they are a bit ahead of us. But I don't see any reason why over the next 10 years we cannot be the success story of the Baltics, of the Baltic region, and of Europe. I think we are quite well set. And there are a couple of things to mention. One, of course, there's only one Oscar, okay? But, there are many other things. In terms of the so much discussed tax system, where every year we spend loads of time how to fine-tune something which is already very good. Okay? Our tax system ranks second best in the world. Just second to the Estonian, okay? Again, neighbors do something a bit better than us. But 2 in the world is not that bad. If we take a look at women scientists, the first place, ranking first in Europe, well, I wouldn't say not that bad at all. In the world, there is no ranking like that, so let's assume we're also first in the world, okay? We need a bit of bragging, but that is not unfounded. If we take a look at many other variables here that are listed, we are doing quite well. If we take a look at the e-government development index, where we always see things to improve, we are 29 in the 29th place globally. This is the last one, okay? Being 29th out of 193, not that bad either. Of course, we can do better, and we should, but it's not that bad position to be in. If we take a look at the gender issues, we see gender balance as a solution, as an opportunity, not as a problem. In terms of managerial positions, we rank second in Europe, just behind Sweden, okay, with a very, very narrow margin. If we take a look at women with doctoral studies, with graduates, we are doing quite well as well. So there are lots of building blocks on which we can build. We are an open economy. 65% of GDP is exports of goods and services. Of course, that also means that we are very sensitive and open to global changes. But that is an opportunity. We are an outward-looking economy. We see that we can grow our well-being and welfare from trading with others. Unemployment rate, 6.9 does look high, but it's among the lowest numbers that we've seen in the Latvian case. So it is to improve the structural things, the lifelong learning and mobility and all these things. But unemployment in Latvia is low. If you take a look at the government debt, yes, somewhat higher than in Estonia and Lithuania, but at 47%, one of the lowest in Europe. So we are also relatively safe in terms of the debt levels that we see for the state. And if one takes a look at the balance sheets of corporates and households, one of the measures, loans to GDP at 29%, which is the lowest in Europe. So again, upside is there. It just has to be realized. So the launching pad in many areas is very favorable for Latvia. If one takes a look at the GDP growth, yes, somewhat patchy last year, but overall, we are growing. Yes, we should grow faster, but numbers, the outlook also is relatively decent. Am I happy about it? No, because I want more. Okay? I'm hungry for growth, and we all are, and we can deliver. What about the foreign direct investment, about interest in our economy? And here, Latvian, Lithuanian, and Estonian data, 2004 and 24, the last 20 years. What we can see that FDI has grown to at least 60–70% in all the 3 Baltic countries of relevant GDP. Okay, a bit lower in Lithuania, but as well kind of very large numbers compared to Europe overall. And if one takes a look at the areas where the investment is made, it is quite broad. The last 3 years, war in Ukraine, the second invasion of Russia into Ukraine, we see that inflows of FDI into the Baltic countries also have continued and have been quite large. Okay, in the Latvian case, last 3 years, more than €1 billion a year. If we take a look at our investment into other countries, 2024, still relatively small numbers, but way bigger than we saw in 2004. So we are starting to look outward. We are investing outward. So far, if one takes a look at the country split, it's still very much, as you will see in this slide, you will see so much Latvia invests in Estonia, Lithuania, not that much in other countries. So we have to move much, much broader. But we are on the map. We do attract investment, and we start to invest abroad. What are the weak kind of points worth of mention? R&D. If we take a look at the R&D numbers, we are very low in the scale, one of the lowest in Europe. If we take a look at investments in manufacturing, and this is what the chart to the right shows, it shows comparative investment in Latvia in segments and sectors of manufacturing compared to Czech Republic, Ireland, Hungary, and Slovakia. And we can see that in high productivity segments, we invest less, we have invested less than our competitors. And we concentrate into segments that are overall less productive. Okay? So investment has to shift towards industries that have higher growth potential. Similar element we can see, and similar situation we see in employment structure. We have more employment in lower productivity sectors than leading economies of Europe. Overall productivity in Europe compared to Latvia is still way higher. So the catch-up possibility and the potential for productivity improvement driven by skills and investment, of course, is still very, very sizable. Okay? So currently, just above 50% of average productivity in Europe. And that's also relevant for the size of companies. On average, Latvian companies are smaller than our competitors. And that may limit investment opportunities, innovation opportunities, and therefore productivity and growth overall. So again, lots of potential here. So far, the run has been quite good, but we seem to be still relatively average in terms of living standards in Europe. And we certainly, given the elements that I highlighted, sound balance sheets, relatively strong educational base, we can certainly do better. Okay. What are those elements that are going to kick us around over the next few years? Let me mention just some of them. One, of course, is geopolitical shifts and the impact on the security overall. The important thing to bring up here is that despite the uncertainty and security issues, foreign direct investment has been flowing into Latvia still very strongly. So we have confidence here. And the defense investment target of 5%, and I did not misspell it. I do think that it is investment. It's not an expenditure or spending. It really is investment. Because investment in security provides stability, it provides optimism and future growth. That, by all means, will be very helpful. And it's important that it's not only about us, it's about Europe as such, it's about NATO as such. We are part of those institutions. And one major shift that we should make is that when we take decisions, we think about Europe. When Europe is strong, we are strong. So, in terms of the European architecture, security, common procurement, but also capital markets union, these are decisions that are gluing us closer together and opening up opportunities for future growth. In terms of defense industry, I'm not going to go into the detail because that is going to be discussed later on. But that provides lots of opportunities also for our industry and our export outlook. Geopolitical shifts, of course, come along with shifts in trade. If one takes a look at trade, I already mentioned that 65% of Latvian GDP is exports of goods and services. 70% of that is Europe. So we are trading with our strategic partners. We should trade more with the US. Okay. And we are well positioned to benefit from the shifts in supply chains, from the shifts in investment relocation. Currently, trade barriers within Europe, especially in terms of services, are still extremely high. These are the low-hanging fruits that we should utilize. So less barriers means better growth. Technology, aging, climate, all those elements will make life harder, but they also open lots of opportunities. And we are open to this. 78% of Latvians think that artificial intelligence should be viewed positively. It's an opportunity that needs to be utilized. 93% of Latvian households have internet access, so the digital base, the infrastructure is robust and strong. What can we do about it? I'm very quickly wrapping it up. How can we steer through these storms? Of course, the best way to steer through economic troubles is with strong economic growth, and we can certainly do it. Currently, what we see on average 2%, it's too slow. We can easily do 5%, and what we can do, human capital, easily 1.5 percentage points to growth annually, investments, 1% growth annually, innovation, and that's the core of thing, because that is the long-term outlook as well. So there is a very clear plan what needs to be done in terms of all three elements to reach 5% growth. But then, why not has it happened yet? And let me just add a couple of things here. One is we are very keen on writing various strategy papers. And it's so exhaustive that, I asked ChatGPT, what's the number of Latvian strategy papers? Well, that was tough, no unique answer. So strategies, plans, sectoral guidelines, by all means, more than 100. Okay? And that is one problem. And how could we come along with solving that? And I think, in my view, that's all about governance and ambition. We should set ambition high, but the governance and implementation of those strategies is the key. So what I would put as the discussion point to some extent going forward as well, one is clear focus. We will not have funding for everything. We cannot do everything. So we need to prioritize and we have to choose. So clear focus in order to say yes, we need to say lots of no. Okay. Point two, Riga. Riga is massively underutilized asset that we have. And there's no doubt about that. The good thing is that we've woken up to it. And what needs to be done? The movie Flow very clearly shows it. It says the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, which means cooperation. Riga should cooperate with the national government. Riga should cooperate with Stockholm, with other capitals, because Riga is not a competitor to Liepāja, to Valmiera, or to any other town in Latvia. Riga is a competitor on a European scale, and that's beneficial. That's how we can grow faster. So cooperation, governance, and ambition. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you to Mārtiņš. Now we move on to the panel, which will build on the points which Mārtiņš raised here. The panel name is Aligning Local Strengths with Global Shift, Latvia in a Changing World. And I'd like to invite all the panelists and the moderator onto stage, and then let's give them a round of applause when they've settled in the seats. So first of all, we have the Minister of Finance of the Republic of Latvia, Arvils Ašerādens, everybody at the end. Roberts Ābele, the CEO of Ioncor, which I mispronounced horribly. Robert, you can correct that later. Jānis Lazda, the Public Policy Manager, International Trade and Economic Policy at Meta. You can come up and take your seats, colleagues. Diana Wagner, Partner and Portfolio Manager at Capital Group. And bringing it all together is our splendid moderator for this panel, Anette Pajuste, who is the Professor of Finance at the Stockholm School of Economics in Riga. And for this panel, it was scheduled to finish at 10:40, but we'll give it an extra 10 minutes. So, Anette, you have until 10:50 for this one. Okay, thank you.
Good morning, everybody, excellencies, dear guests. So this panel will be about aligning local strengths in global shifts, Latvian changing world. It's an amazing lineup of speakers, and all of them could speak for 40 minutes, so this will be a challenge, but we have a plan. I will start with introduction, and the idea of that is that you can continue talking to these people during the breaks. So we start in alphabetical order, and with Arvils Ašerādens, Latvia's Minister for Finance and a key architect of the country's fiscal and economic agenda. He has strong background in both government and business, and before entering politics, he served as CEO and chairman of the board of Diena, Latvia's leading newspaper. Then Roberts Ābele. He's CEO of Ioncor, one of Europe's leading independent suppliers of battery systems. He's born in California and grew up in a Latvian family, and he has spent the last 30 years living and working internationally in various roles with Siemens, Continental Automotive, and Tesco Technologies. Roberts currently resides with his wife Gundega in Helsinki, Finland. Jānis Lazda has over 2 decades of experience in international trade and economic policy. He has served as a policy advisor to the Obama White House, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, and the United States Senate. In the private sector, he has led trade policy for the second largest U.S. retail company and importer, and he now oversees trade policy at Meta, the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. He lives and works in Washington, D.C. Diana Wagner She was born in Riga, Latvia, and currently is a partner and equity portfolio manager at Capital Group. She has been with Capital Group for 25 years, initially serving as an equity investment analyst covering global semiconductor industry, US healthcare services, and global paper and forest products. Founded in 1931, Capital Group is a privately held investment firm with 2.8 trillion in assets under management. Earlier in her career, Diana worked in investment banking at Inge Barings in London and SBC Warburg in New York. She holds an MBA from Columbia Business School and a BA in art history from Yale. She resides in New York City with her husband and 2 children, and also serves on the board of Sloan Foundation, the Yale-Jackson School of Global Affairs, and Scholars at Risk. And your moderator, I'm professor of finance at Stockholm School of Economics in Riga, and also a board chair at the Baltic Family Firm Institute, which is a nonprofit organization which builds the community for family businesses, offering expert support, advocacy, and connections to help navigate succession, strengthen financial stability, and build multi-generational prosperity. I recently returned to Latvia from spending 4 years in Boston, where I was conducting research on corporate governance at Harvard Law School and then teaching at Boston University. So without further ado, so let's start with the questions. And so the panel is about how a small open economy can be globally relevant today. Is it innovation, agility, talent, or the ability to adapt and lead in a shifting world? So with the first question, so let's begin by looking at Latvia from within. What are the key local strengths and that stand out globally and that are relevant in today's world? So let's start with the finance minister, please.
Thank you, Professor Pajuste. And I would start with that. I'm very happy to be here and to see such a prominent group of people here, and of course I would like to just mention, as I was very surprised about the sales skills of our governor of Latvian Bank. He really made extremely good sales pitch here for Latvia, and I hope we will do the same. And regarding internal, let's say internal competitiveness criteria, I might say I would like to mention a couple of them. Number one is Latvia is small, very complex, and very, very resilient economy. And what I mean by that, there are 2 things. If you, for example, those who have an interest in that, just check on Atlas of Economical Complexity, its instrument by Harvard, you will find out that Latvia have an extremely great number of companies, and great number of companies, they are small, yes, but you can find any kind of specialization here. You can find companies in genome, you can find companies in pharma, you can find companies in robust businesses like construction and any kind of other areas. But one very, very important thing, this economy by decades show enormous resilience to all kind crises what overcome. It was a COVID crisis or recent geopolitical or trade wars, geopolitical headwinds or trade wars. Economy always keep floating, and always economy find a ways how to survive on strong global headwinds. Number one. Then I want to mention as an excellent part of Latvia is that it's infrastructure. We practically have everything, but anything you want. Energy sector, excellent, lot of green energies, independent energy network connected to Europe, roads, ports, airport connections. Then we look in deeper into infrastructure. Then, of course, is all kind of internet and digital infrastructure, all what we have. And then very important part of our nation, what I mentioned, other capitals now, that is nature capital. that is, how to say, that's made a great influence on our thinking because Latvians still party pantheists. You know, we are celebrating on Midsummer, we celebrating pantheistic tradition. On Christmas, we celebrating in a Christian way, and of course we have a fantastic natural resource. And last one, that is human capital, what we have, and that is worth to mention. It is if we Martin already shows the transition for the last 30 years, and people really had learned a lot of skills to do, and I mentioned those very, very complex economy. What we have now, this is small, there is a great potential in development, but I might just mention one important part of this, what the government put a quite attention on it, that is inclusiveness, yeah. For example, Latvia are, if you look on World Press Freedom Index, Latvia ranking 15th country amongst the world societies. And like latest development of this government is legal regulation of partnership. Again, this is very important, not crucial, we say economically, but it's again a very important development of inclusiveness on our society. And latest, what I mentioned, what is fantastic, that is university reform. Yeah, right now we accelerated 4 Latvian universities, scientific universities, and their speed of development is fantastic, and there we expected our future developments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so now, Yanis, you have great experience from like international and being in government in US. Yeah.
Sure, and thank you again for the opportunity to be here. In terms of Latvia's strengths that I think maybe are overlooked, I'll say 2 things, and I'll start with maybe an uncomfortable perspective from Washington, which is it is hard to overstate the skepticism in the United States, and I would say Washington in particular, of Europe's ability to undertake the needed reforms to invest in the innovation that it needs. This was only underscored by these reports that came out last year from the Commission, the European Commission itself, the Draghi report, emphasizing the importance and the urgency of these investments. And it's not that Europeans aren't amazing innovators, they certainly are, but it is really the challenge of overcoming legacy industries. If you look at Europe, its most valuable companies, none of its most valuable companies were founded in the past 50 years. All of the US most valuable companies were founded in recent decades. And these legacy industries create what the Commission says is a self-fulfilling lack of dynamism, because these are the companies, these legacy companies are the ones who are investing in themselves. So a lot of discussion of Europe being static and failing to adapt. Now, where does Latvia fit in? Nothing about the past 30 years in Latvia has been static. And its ability to reform and adapt is nothing but astounding. Adapting to reforms, adapting to internal crises and external crises. And I think that is the strength that the world needs to hear. Latvia as innovator, Latvia as disruptor, together with other like-minded economies, to be a disruptor in Brussels. I think that is not only a welcome message to hear, but something that is expected in Washington, to hear the more disruptive, innovative voices from Latvia and like-minded economies. The second point that Mr. Kozak pointed out is small is beautiful when it comes to innovation, right? It's not just the small size, but the concentration of universities, of innovators, of companies that Latvia has. If you think about why Silicon Valley in its initial inception succeeded, was because it was small, because there was this concentration. And as Silicon Valley has grown, the focus now is more on Boulder, Colorado, or Arlington, Virginia, or Columbus, Ohio, where these smaller innovative clusters. And that's something that I think Latvia has and you should double down on.
Okay, thank you very much. So now let's zoom out and let's look at the global trends that might create some opportunities and also challenges going forward. So Robert, you have experience from like both energy sector and then Finland that also borders Russia. So please.
Sure. I mean, it's unfortunate when we talk about energy today and we look back at this conference years ago that we're starting first with independence or national security, right? I think if you look back 5 years ago, we're still talking about the Paris Climate Agreement and we're talking about CO2, carbon neutrality and stuff like that. It's still a topic, but I think what, you know, I don't have to explain to anybody here in this room. We all know where the gas was coming from just years ago, and obviously we're proud that, you know, as of this year we're now connected to the EU grid, these topics, but it's a reality, right? And I think it has to be in the forefront when we talk about independence and national security when it talks to energy. It doesn't mean green transition is not in our focus, but it's just a secondary. It's a second focus on that one. You talk about Finland, where I'm now living since September. I mean, obviously a huge focus on whether it's solar, whether it's hydro, whether it's wind, all of those focus. But I think one thing I have to underscore, what I see also living there now, it has to be, and I think this is the perfect forum, it has to be a collaboration between government and business. It can't be either or independently. It has to be a joint effort. And I think that's what I clearly see as a difference on that one. But again, I come from the automotive industry, and I cannot underscore, it's not talked about in these public forums, but I mean, it's a black eye on Germany and the premier automotive industry, what's happened over the years. And I think we cannot allow this also here in Latvia or in general in these other energy sectors. We have to put it at our forefront and be honest with ourselves. And you talked about legacy companies and what has happened, but they've been sleeping at the wheel, if I use that metaphor. And it's quite embarrassing right now that since 2013, China has deliberately a clear strategy. And I think it's great that we're talking, or we will talk about this afternoon regarding wind, solar, all these things. But we have to look at, yeah, it might be generated in Europe, but who generates the software? Who generates that equipment? That has to be looked at, because otherwise we're going to be in a very similar situation like we were with gas and electricity. And again, last but not least, I think that's the thing that I would wish here in Latvia. Maybe it's just not evident to me, but what I see in Finland, it's business, it's government, but it's very targeted and focused. One of the clusters is the battery cluster. The other one is hydrogen. They're not trying to do everything like Northvolt did, by the way, like a company, but also there in a country. We have to really be specific to say what is our specialty and focus on and double down on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And another area that definitely is like transformative, providing opportunities and challenges AI. So Diana, could you please speak to that?
So first of all, I just want to say thank you for inviting me to be part of today's event. It's already been so inspiring, and I just love the mayor's comment that opportunity is a reason to stay, not a reason to leave Latvia. That's just a wonderful message. And I've been preparing for this event. I took a look because in my daily life, don't really look at Latvia too closely because kind of the investment universe here is rather small, and that's kind of an opportunity for the future. But I did take a look, and I also observed the incredible convergence in GDP per capita between kind of the Baltics and some of the more developed European countries, as Martin was saying. And it's remarkable that just a couple of decades ago, there was a 4x gap between Germany and the Baltics. And today it's less than 2x. So of course, Latvia is lagging behind Estonia and Lithuania. And so I think a key question for Latvia, and this is something that we've already heard in a few iterations today, is what does Latvia want, what role does Latvia want to play in the world going forward? What does it want its focus to be? And of course, when you look around and you see what's happening with the kind of reversal of globalization, and you see EU supply chains integrating more, you'd think that there would be an opportunity for onshoring, an opportunity for Latvia there. But as we saw with Martin's slides, productivity here is not that great. In the manufacturing sectors and logistics and services, the emphasis here is still on low-cost labor rather than value-added innovation. And so I think that as Latvia looks forward, AI has to be an answer for future opportunity. And AI is going to be an equalizing force that's going to transform industries and disrupt, and accelerate disruption. And to succeed in AI, Latvia needs to create the educational, regulatory, and infrastructure backdrop for that. And I think that a lot can be learned from the Estonian and Lithuanian examples. And most of you know this very well, but just kind of to highlight some of the key points, I think a lot of it is on kind of taking all the strategy papers and deciding what the focus is going to be. And Estonia decided decades ago that they were going to lead with technology. And so they invested in digital literacy, invested in a digital infrastructure to enable this incredible ecosystem to evolve. And today, today the country has become essentially a startup nation with government-backed accelerators and a highly evolved digital infrastructure, and they can boast one of the highest per capita numbers of unicorns in that country, and some of the most important digital companies in the world, like Bolt and Verif and Wise PLC, have Estonian roots. And Lithuania similarly kind of decided that they were going to make strategic investments in governance and e-governance and digitalization, and they made themselves an easy place to do business. And they decided after Brexit that they were going to be the fintech gateway for Europe. And now over 250 fintech companies operate in Lithuania. And they also pursued this startup nation model. And there was a lot of government support, not just in terms of capital, but also in terms of policies to attract talent. So I think Latvia has to decide on what you want to be and then execute on it with focus. And I think another part of this is going to be deregulation, because I think Latvia needs to do everything they can to clear regulatory hurdles to enable AI, and use deregulation also to make it just easier to do business here.
Thank you very much. Talking about global trends, we of course cannot ignore tariffs. And Jānis, you have something to say about that?
Yes, I do. I think despite the fact that President Trump was very clear in his campaign what he was going to do on trade policy and tariffs, I think we've all been surprised by the pace at which Washington has dismantled and disrupted the norms and the rules of 80 years of the international trading system, and the ability of tariffs to disrupt commercial ties and on a weekly basis, and this week is no different. This is then the question. What I would also say is that this is not going to change, right? This is not going to wait. This will be the situation for years to come. So the question is, how does Latvia position itself in those rough waters as a fairly small ship in these rough waters? And there is, I think, important to emphasize, there is an oasis, right? There is an oasis of relative stability where you're not exposed to these duties and tariffs, and that is the global services sector, the global services export sector, which is one where the U.S. again dominates, and I think where Europe can definitely do more, and Latvia can do more. As policies have aligned with connectivity and digitalization, the costs of entering the global services market have fallen. But also, services are the fastest growing segment of international trade. Services exports are growing at 3 times the rate of manufactured goods. So what am I talking about? Information technology services, e-commerce services, financial services. I have to mention Flow, audiovisual services exports, those 60 million in global sales, those are exports. But also, transportation, logistics, tourism. These are all lucrative segments of the economy. If you look at digital services exports, they're growing, those jobs are growing at 4 times the rate of the rest of the services industry, and oftentimes they pay up to 50% more. So it's not just an oasis, it's a pretty nice place to be. So I think that's one where we can certainly double down. I think also it's just important to emphasize that services are not a zero sum, and that now more and more even the manufactured goods exports are tied to a services export as well, which makes them especially attractive.
Thank you. And since there are like quite many business representatives in the audience, a natural question is to Diana. So what do U.S. investors look when they invest in Europe? So can you please share some insights?
Sure. Well, I'll kind of share a framework for how I look at investments and kind of in Europe and elsewhere. But I think kind of looking at a country like Latvia, a first question I ask is, are there any financial imbalances now or looming in the future? And in recent years, Latvia has not experienced any major imbalances. The fiscal deficit looks okay, as does the modest current account deficit, and kind of despite the higher defense spending that you've seen. And then after I look at that, I look at growth. And growth, as we've heard today, so far has not been all that great in Latvia. For 2025, consensus estimates I've seen call for 1.5% GDP growth, which is akin to Romania and Hungary, not necessarily kind of countries we want to compare ourselves to, and quite a bit below the 3% that Lithuania and Poland are experiencing this year. And recently, Latvia came out to the market with a Eurobond offering, and at Capital Group, our fixed income analysts met with the team and kind of heard the pitch. And frankly, the feedback was Latvia didn't do a great job of articulating the growth story and where future growth will come from. And that's an opportunity for Martin, for the whole team. And it's a question of kind of deciding, as we've said before, kind of what you want to be, where you see yourselves in the world, and what will drive growth. And there's so many advantages here. You have the great tax regime, you have an educated workforce, though recently the emigration trends have picked up again, and that's a challenge. But you have a lot of opportunities here, a lot of talent, and the question is, how can you translate that into faster growth? Because that's what's going to attract our attention versus all the other places where we can put money. And then when I look at specific companies in a market like Latvia, another key thing that I'm going to look for is sound corporate governance, clear ownership structures and transparency. So I'm going to try to avoid sectors that have a lot of government ownership or politically connected ownership. And I'm also going to look at shareholder rights and minority protections. And then for every industry I look at across every country, company management is a critical aspect in my investment analysis. And I've invested in a number of industries where the gap between the best and the worst companies is not necessarily scale or having the best assets, but it's really the skill of company management. And the best management teams, they have a long-term vision, they can see around corners and invest in big trends way ahead of their peers. They're also laser focused on execution, operating excellence, and they also understand what good capital allocation means. Now, no country has a monopoly on great management teams, and in fact, in my experience, I found that in some of the most challenging markets to operate in, some of the ones with the most kind of volatility, they breed some of the best management teams. Like I would cite Brazil as a great example. And I'm looking forward to meeting the great Latvian management teams that are building for the future and developing this country into a wonderful investment landscape.
Thank you. I think we are a bit running out of time. So I think one question that this audience might unusual is like about talent and how to attract talent back to Latvia. So maybe Robert, if you can share. So what brought you from California to Finland, even colder than Latvia? So can you share some?
That's true. We used to say I'd never move to Latvia. It's too dark and too cold. And now I say I head south for some warmer weather in Riga now. That's what I say with my wife. But no, there was a few stops in between California and Finland and Germany and in France. But one thing that stands out is and I think it's important, something to consider in Latvia, because I've never felt, and maybe it is the Baltic connection with living now in Helsinki, but it's been the easiest integration for my wife and myself compared to Germany, compared to France. One is the inclusivity, right? So it's the English language that very easily, not only it's a business language, but very, very easy to integrate within the Finnish community. Although I'm still in the honeymoon, I've only been there 9 months. I've read statistics preparing for today that after 5 years, the retention rate is not as high. So we'll see forward with that one. But obviously, I'll be quite honest, it was between Germany and Finland where they wanted to position me because I spoke German. But there is also an interesting tax incentive for expert positions, right? So selectively, the government is looking how to bring in talent and also do that with a specific tax. So those are also something that we need to consider here in Latvia as well, bringing talent.
Thank you. And yeah, so now let's look at going forward. What should Latvia do, and what are the strategic choices? So, Finance Minister, could you please talk to the choices of Latvia going forward very briefly, and then we'll do a speed round at the end.
Of course, we have a lot of choices, and of course, very important is to take as existing geopolitical situation and economical situation. But from government priorities, I would mention 3 of them. Number 1 is government focus on helping Latvian business to more and more integrated in global value chains, to really to help those who are more innovative and who are really looking for international cooperation, to help those. And that is very important in government investment in universities, what I already mentioned. And we working on projects like Knowledge Mile, where we should join all universities to join forces on bigger international projects. Second, very important priority for government, that is development of capital market. And we have excellent infrastructure with NASDAQ. And this week on Monday, I visited Euroclear to develop channel for let's say all Central European capital. Let's say easy Central European capital access to Baltic markets, and of course there worth to mention is really bond market right now is booming in Latvia. The growth last year was more than 40%, and that's exceeded billions of euros. And last is what government preparing ourselves. That is, there we're working with our state financial institution Altum and facilitating funds in order create and to stimulate acquisition and merger process. Yeah, what we see is a problem. What we want to solve here, there is a lot of but very small companies, and we really have to stimulate merger process in order to create the size and to have a resource for investment in innovation and productivity. Those are 3 points where I would like to stipulate here. Thank you.
Thank you. And now to the last question, and the speed round and question to everybody. So the one thing that Latvia must not ignore in the next 5 years. So what would that be? Let's start from this side.
Sure. It's human capital. It's very, very clear for me. It's talent. We have AI. We have all the technologies. It's human, right? I feel at home as a Latvian American in a country that I never thought I'd visit, let alone live. How do we do that here in Latvia? We're 1.8 million, 400,000 diaspora. How do we make people like someone else, another nation, feel at home here in Latvia? I mean, it's the human capital that we have to attract.
I have to say something that's very top of mind coming from the United States. And while it's important to move quickly and decisively on economic policy, I would just warn to bring as much of society along as possible. Otherwise, you risk the politics of resentment, of feeling left behind. That is a real problem in the United States, and I think will make it hard to execute on good policy making going forward.
I agree with both of those points, and I would emphasize the human capital flight. You know, Latvia faces a shrinking population and an aging society. Young, educated Latvians are still leaving, which is not good. And without people, there's no economy, there's no tax base, there's no innovation ecosystem. And so that has to be priority number 1, reversing this trend, or at least mitigating it by finding ways to attract local talent, invest in education, and also find ways to make Latvia a magnet for foreign talent.
I already mentioned my 3, but I fully agree about human capital and all speakers, just like Madam Wagner says. For example, we need extremely good management teams for the good company performance on global arena, and that's again is human capital. And I was very happy to hear what Foreign Minister said. It's more than on annual basis more than 10,000 expats returning home, and that's a good basis is a good base for that. And what of course that worth to mention, a lot of Latvian, let's say, students going to study abroad, yeah, and they're returning, and with good ideas, with good connections, and so on and so on. But human capital development for Latvia is a fundamental issue.
Okay, thank you. And I think to summarize, my takeaway from discussion is that comes out like repeatedly is, I think, three things, like focus and articulate that focus outside very well. Then resilience, use that as an opportunity that we are adaptable, we have gone through crisis and take the positive out of it, that we are flexible and then going forward. And the third thing, collaboration, use the clusters, work with between universities, companies, and bring the Latvia's economy, the success together, not alone. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. If you can just stay seated, I'll be very quick. I'm returning to my fantasy of being an Air Baltic steward. There are exits over there, which will guide you towards tea and coffee and chocolates from Pura chocolate producer. And we meet back here promptly at 11:10 because Pēters Blumberg said it would be 11:10 or else, okay? So please enjoy the break, and thank you again to the great panel. echoing through the bowels of the library and into the coffee room. If you're having a coffee, perhaps you could make your way into the auditorium, because we'd like to start nice and early. We'd like to start on time, and as you know, as I have previously commented, the president of the World Federation of Free Latvians likes things to happen on time and makes it happen on time. Okay, let's start then this second session. Perhaps everybody could calm down a little bit. Shh, calm down. I'm more excited than anybody here, but let's control it. Shh, guys. Okay, so this next session will begin with an overview of Latvia Smart Digital Green, given by Ieva Jāgere, who is the Director General at the Investment and Development Agency of Latvia. And then following Ieva's 15-minute presentation, we will have a panel discussion on this. But now I hand over the stage to Ieva Jāgere. Ieva, please, stage is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my absolute pleasure to be here with you, and today I will take you through a short journey through Latvia's investment landscape, and I will tell you more why more and more investors are choosing Latvia as an investment destination. All you know that in the business, speed matters. From here, you can reach 450 million consumers within up to 3 hours flight and up to 3 days by car. Those who didn't know, Latvia ranks among top world countries providing the fastest internet, which is great, since that gives us extra time to think, to innovate, and to be ahead of the competitors. If we continue about the speed, Latvia is one of the fastest growing foreign direct investment destinations in Europe. Latvia is not anymore a hidden gem, and investors are not just discovering us, they are scaling with us. Since 2010, Latvia's foreign direct investments has increased 3 times, reaching all-time high 26 billion in 2024. And yes, the strongest investor confidence is from Europe's core economies. Investor confidence is rising. And according to Fiscal Sentiment Index 2024, Latvia has shown significant progress. And for the first time, we have surpassed Estonia, and we are on par with Lithuania, both scoring 3 out of 5. And strongest improvements relates to increased political stability, accelerated digitalization, and streamlined administrative processes. And for sure, Latvia's investment climate is gaining momentum. What matters most to investors? According to EY Attractiveness Survey Europe 2025, our biggest strengths and advantages are competitive energy costs and quality of life. But regarding the perceived risks, actually, geopolitics is not the main concern, but political instability. While we may not have that much control over geopolitical situation, but political stability is in our hands. It's our responsibility. to ensure that investors feel confident and secure, especially now when United States is becoming more attractive foreign direct investment destination. We have strong value proposition, which is built on 3 main pillars: digital, smart, and green. Latvia is one of the greenest countries in the European Union, with 53% of forest coverage. But equally, we are ambitious in digitalization and human capital. 95% of young professionals speak English, and 82% of students study in higher education. With regards to the digitalization, 91% of public services are available online, which is above the EU average. Our focus is future-ready industries. We invest where it matters in sectors that are future-proof, innovation-rich, and strategically important for the Europe and for the world. And our focus goes to 5 main sectors, which are digital, energy, manufacturing, bioeconomy, and defense. And now we are on the mission 1 billion euros. This is a target for investment agency for this year and also for the next year. Last year, we attracted 655 million euros in foreign direct investments. If we compare to Lithuanian investment agency, they attracted 355 millions, and Estonians even less, 255 million euros. So our mission, our goal is very, very ambitious, but we know that we can reach it. Currently, we are working, and in our pipeline, we are having 160 projects, investment projects, with a total value, potential foreign direct investment volume, 11.4 billion euros, and with projected jobs, almost 8,000. If we look on the breakdown below, these are the countries from where the investors are considering the Latvia as an investment destination. And the biggest interest comes from Norway, Germany, and United States. And this is Latvia in action. Here you can see only some of the companies that has chosen Latvia. For example, Ironis, already globally known company, providing services to global wind farm companies, wind turbine production companies, and recently raised 62 million euros. Another example, Norse Atlantics. Last year, they established a business client center here in Latvia. Another one, Frankenburg Technologies, representing defense industry. And this is Estonian investor who chose to be here in Latvia and will establish production plant and R&D center. Open banking leader, Go Cardless, fintech company, very well known, and already operating processing 35 billion euros globally. And deep tech photonics company, Baltic Photonics, recently, last week, they opened a new production plant here in Latvia. And those are only a few examples. We have many, many more. Yes, so this was, thank you for joining me on this short journey. I really believe you enjoyed it, and your dreams are our mission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Eva. We now move on to the panel, which will be discussing inward investment, outward exports. The panel will be, and I will just quickly ask everybody to come up as I name them. They'll be introduced in more detail by the moderator, and the moderator is Mārtiņš Andersons, the president of the American Latvian Association. So Mārtiņ, if you could come up here. And could you be joined by Fredis Bikovs, Gunta Schulte, Girts Graudiņš, and Agate Freiman. And this panel will be discussing building a competitive future for Latvia by driving strategic investment and export growth. Over to you, Mārtiņ.
Thank you, Dauni. Yes, certainly our discussion has a mouthful title. It's rather long, but really the way I look at it is we've just heard a series of wonderful presentations and advertisements about how great Latvia is, and now we have these private sector experts to kind of share their perspective from kind of the outside looking in. So let me introduce you to our experts. These are I want to call them they're on the front lines of business in terms of exports and investment. We have Agate Freiman. She is the founder and general partner at Norsken VC, Europe's largest venture capital investor in climate technologies, with over $500 million in assets under management. She is currently based in Stockholm, but she was born and raised in Liepāja. She has studied in the UK and started her investment banking career at Morgan Stanley in London. Say hello, Agate. Next, we have next to her Girts Graudiņš, who is the founder of Baltic Way LLC. Girts has been building and running engineering teams at Silicon Valley startups for over 15 years, most notably at Twilio. He is an active investor in Baltic early-stage startups, including such notable Latvian startups as Erons, which we just heard about, Suppleful, and SonarWorks. He actively consults Baltic startups scaling in the United States, and through his activities as a regional director of the Latvian American Chamber of Commerce, he fosters closer business ties between the US and Latvia. Next, we have Gunta Schulte, who is CEO at Madara Cosmetics, a role that she's held since 2023. As probably many of you know, Madara is a Latvian-based cosmetics company specializing in nature-inspired and science-backed skincare and makeup. Madara's most recent annual revenues exceeded 21 million euros. They employ over 200 people, and their market reach includes more than 45 countries worldwide. And finally, we have Fredis Bikovs, Managing Director at the Riga Investment and Tourism Agency. Fredis leads Rita's efforts to attract investors, promote Riga internationally, and foster strong public-private collaboration, and overall enhance the city's long-term economic growth. Fredis has an extensive private sector background, having held leadership roles at Evri Latvia, ABSL Latvia, and Volt Latvia, and has also worked with Transcom Worldwide Latvia, Runway BPO, and Nordea Bank. Please, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you for joining us. So we just had this wonderful introductory presentation from Director Jāgera about Latvia as an investment destination, but I want to get your perspective now on brand Latvia. So Girt, maybe let's start with you. In a recent press profile, I read that you're focusing on early-stage software as a service companies with, quote, Baltic roots and global ambitions, which for today's discussion, I'm going to selfishly paraphrase as focusing on companies with Latvian roots and global ambitions. Why is this a mantra for you, and what, is there an inherent advantage to companies with Latvian roots and global ambitions, especially when talking to investors?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks everybody for having me here. It's been a humbling and very inspiring experience so far, and I hope it'll go even better going forward. So also, yeah, thanks actually for noticing that phrase. Words really matter, and there was quite a bit of thought behind it. So maybe just quickly, what is it, how I got there, and why is it so? So what is it? It's just 4 words, but it succinctly distills what I think is kind of the winning formula for Latvian startups. And also, it happens to be my investment thesis. And it's not just, rosy patriotism. It's actually something that I arrived at through thinking and talking to founders and other investors and so forth. And it's essentially my belief, my thesis for investing in general. I believe in this region. There's many reasons. We've mentioned human capital before. That's a big part of it. We have very high percentage of STEM graduates. We have really good talent. And when you're investing in early stage, you're really investing in people, essentially. So that's one of the factors. We're continuously on the top of ratings for regulatory environment for startups. We have a rich history of innovation in the region. And, by the way, from the investing side, the valuations are really good. So for those reasons, that kind of has become my thesis. And also, I truly believe it's the winning formula for us.
Thank you, Dirts. Fred, on a similar note, when you're talking to investors, how are you packaging Latvia? I mean, we have a great phrase over here, a great mantra. Do you have a mantra? And what seems to have worked for you so far?
Yes, definitely. And number one thing that I always challenge when I speak publicly, because and those people who know me and heard me speaking about investments before already hate me for that, probably repeating that over again. But I still feel there is a big disconnect of what, when I turn on the TV and see people talking about how to attract investment, what they're mentioning as a value what Latvia can provide is a very big disconnect between that and what I hear in the private meetings when you meet the potential investors. And this might differ from sector to sector. I'm speaking only about Riga, which is mostly focused on so to say, service economy, which is IT companies, startups, global business services, and so on. Number one, by far, I think we're discussing in a closed meeting with a potential investor is the workforce and talent availability. Many companies which we work with don't even get to the stage of discussing what's your tax system, what's your cost of the talent, and so on. Most of I don't want to say they don't care about that. They do care about that, but only after you can convince them that there are people who can produce services and products that are exported globally. So, and that's a big disconnect. They don't care if the tax could be zero on everything. If there are no people who can do that, there is no point of having that benefit, right? So that's number one challenge. And from that perspective, I think we have a good stand. All of the Europe has challenges with the workforce. It's quite clear. But also, if we look at an outsourcing market in IT sector, global business services, and so on, we see that a lot of our competitor cities like Warsaw, Krakow, Budapest, Prague, they're extremely oversaturated. A lot of large, giant brands have moved to those cities, and that gives a lot of pressure on the talent market, much higher pressure than here. That's why we see companies like Roche, like Go Cardless, like Tech Mahindra, and many other global business services that already entered in a few years now Riga, and we have more in pipeline, are looking for locations like Riga because there is still opportunity to grow. But that being said, I think that we as a country and as a city need also to do more into that talent area. And I know it's a very we're a rather conservative country in that sense, but it's an important point that I don't think that we necessarily should be more liberal when it comes to opening up borders and bringing talents. It's not about that. It's, I've been earlier this year in the United States, and someone from, I think it was Wisconsin Economic Development Agency, they said, what US is good as, US is the best country in the world in understanding what we lack, finding that talent anywhere in the world and bringing them in the country. So it's not really about so much about liberal or not liberal migration policy. It's about understanding what you need and finding that particular person. And what is even more important, it's not only about the capacity and scale that let's bring, I don't know, 10, 50,000 people. It's also about the knowledge transfer. I know for a fact that there are multiple IT companies in Latvia which won big projects, and let's say they need, I don't know, 50, 60 developers in 3 months. And I talked to one of the CEOs and asked him, how are you going to find in 3 months 50 developers? He said, we won't. We'll bring, because there is no capacity and there is no knowledge, we'll bring some of them from other countries to here, and then we'll hire local ones. And the task of those who will bring within a year or two is to transfer the knowledge. So we have to look on that question also as a knowledge transfer. So yes, I can continue, but I'm going to speak about talent.
But I mean, we've heard this topic about human capital and the availability of talent in Latvia come up multiple times today. In your response just now, I heard it as both a strength and a weakness. I heard from you there's opportunity here, especially maybe stealing away business from some of these oversaturated cities, but then there's also the challenge that you aren't necessarily going to find those 50 developers in a short time frame. So maybe can you just clarify your response a little bit in terms of what's your first pitch when you're meeting with these investors? I hope that you're not starting with the fact it's going to be tough to find.
And it really depends on what exactly you're looking for. All right, so we usually prepare before meeting an actual investor. We do the analysis of what exactly they're looking at for, what's availability and so on. So many companies which I mentioned that enter the market, they're not really in the IT field, but also in IT field, like we can mention one of the recent entrants, somewhat recent, is Swisscom, which has grown now into more than 300 developers in Riga. So it's doable, and the benefit also is that if you're entering Riga with, let's say, a regionally known, not a global brand. Like you're not Nike or Adidas or Citibank, right? I worked for Every, which is the largest Norwegian IT company, but no one knew them in Latvia, right? So, and we had delivery centers in Warsaw and Riga. In Riga, we could build an employer brand with rather limited budget and attract talent easier because it's a smaller market and it's easier to operate here. It's easier to build connections with universities and with whoever you need to build in. While in Warsaw, to be honest, we failed miserably because if you're with a no-name brand for Polish market and you're competing, let's assume Citibank or whoever, you're in a lot of trouble.
Thank you for that. Well, actually, then maybe let's continue this topic on the human capital dimension, and let's bring in our only employer on the panel, Gunta. What's your perspective, kind of from Madra's side of the world, in terms of you have more than 200 employees? Maybe can you share some insights on your successes or challenges with this human capital question?
Yeah, I think it's twofold if we talk and specifically about Madra's case now. So we have the product side, which is then R&D. So Madra owns full cycle of product research and development. So the product side then composes of really intellectual capacity to drive innovation forward. And here we are talking about really moving formulations to the competition that matches conventional cosmetics, because we are working in certified organic glass. And then there is a topic of labor that actually works in the factory, packages, etc. So I would say each of those components composes different types of challenges. I would say where we have been quite lucky over the years, and to a certain extent it could be related also to some heritage being attributed to cosmetics industry already in Latvia. To some extent, the amount of STEM people or students that are graduating, that we have been able to relatively well, also thanks to brand or employer branding, to attract good and talented people in terms of product development and innovation. There is an ongoing struggle when we talk about more the, let's say, physical aspect of packing and producing the goods. So this is an ongoing struggle. Now we move to the top line part of the discussion, and this gets tricky. Madra is 75% e-com based, so e-commerce business. So if we account for our direct e-commerce or if we account for third parties where we sell our products. So over the last, I would say, and COVID really spiraled that conversation, we really have to build in-house competency in how to drive a brand from here globally on e-commerce based platforms. And this is where conversation gets really technical and tricky, also when it comes to attracting right talent. Just to give example of over the last 2 years, we have been putting on the strategic map how do we enter marketplaces, so Amazon, TikTok Shop, Walmart, etc. This is a very technically specific channel, both from placing the products there, selling the products there, and then everything else that comes in terms of delivering the products to those marketplaces, but then also advertising on those. And this is where we stumbled across that we don't have, literally maybe there 2 years ago, I know I was literally deep down into the selecting candidates, and there are literally like, I don't know, 2-3 people in Latvia. We could discuss the topic. At the end, we have an amazing person who actually moved here to Riga from Pakistan, who is leading the marketplaces now. So that kind of talent we understand, especially if we talk about new verticals of business that necessarily, like maybe to Freddy's point, that we have to bring in and think how we transfer the knowledge, where in some other countries already these verticals are much more advanced. So
if I read between the lines, I'm hearing maybe do more with less, given the challenges of finding the right people for the right roles. Is that what Madara's solution has been in this case?
Not necessarily. I would rephrase it. It's just coming back to the point that finding the right people, again, to the maybe US success point, is exactly the same. Like we identify what are those critical, if we talk about top line in this particular case, like revenue-driven functions, what are those critical revenue-driving functions? If we can't find somebody in here, then we expand the horizon.
Okay, thank you. If we come back to the topic of investments and attracting investments, I want to ask Agate. Although you were born in Latvia, you've spent most of your career abroad, first as an investment banker in London and now as a fund founder in Stockholm. What's your, if you'll forgive me for saying this, your outsider's perspective on Latvia from an investment standpoint? Does Latvia register on your radar screen from an investment perspective? I think in the previous panel we heard some very strong opinions, and I'd love to hear yours.
On my personal radar, of course, it registers. So it's more of the question, does it register on the radar of my international colleagues? And in my case, I'm a venture capital investor, so I'm really talking about it from a venture capital investor perspective, so investors in very early stage companies. And the question that most international venture capital investors will be getting is not, is Latvia on your radar? The way the question is usually phrased is Baltics on your radar? And there's a lot of interesting things in that statement from an investor's, from international's perspective. Latvia, and we as Latvians may not love to hear this, but we as a country are not really part of the conversation. We're part of a conversation as a region, as Baltics. And in our case, in Latvia's case, that's a huge positive. And the reason that Latvia and the Baltics are on the radar for international venture capital investors, it's actually a lot thanks to our neighbors. Diana in the previous panel talked a lot about the Estonian success stories. It's a global phenomena. A country of 1.3 million people have built $10 billion tech companies. That's just incredible. So everyone locally is looking at the success of Estonia and they think, wow, there is something magical happening in that region. And we should be really happy and proud of our neighbors because that also spills over to Latvia and that also spills over to Lithuania. But the official statistics is that Estonia has $10 billion companies. Lithuania, as far as my research goes, has $4 billion companies, and Latvia has 1. So we are, but at the same time, I don't want to make the statement as competitive or we're behind. I want the statement to be that as Baltics, we're doing really, really well, and Latvia wins when our neighbors win. So maybe sometimes also we should talk less about, is Latvia on our radar? What do we do to boost Latvia? When it comes from the tech sector and to attract international capital, maybe there's more to be done as Baltics. Like, let's just reunite the resources. Let's put the spotlight on Baltics as a whole rather than each individual countries. And of course here, we know the difference. Like, the reality, probably most people here sit, we see these 3 countries as quite different. You know, there are cultural differences, there are language differences. But our secret advantage is that the rest of the world doesn't see those differences. They literally think that Baltics is just one big country. So if our neighbors succeed, we will succeed, and if we succeed, our neighbors will succeed. So through that statement, I also want to encourage us to think more as a Baltic region than a standalone country.
Ready? I can actually relate to that on a very practical level. One of the investors that we got on one of the latest stages, they were doing the analysis of the number of people in the country, then specific roles, like how many graduates a year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they were comparing to a country which was, I think, 5 times bigger than Latvia. So we struggled, what arguments would we use? And we changed all the data and said not Latvia, but Baltics. And you're actually entering the market with not 1.7 million people, but almost like 6 million. And that actually worked.
Exactly, and in the end of the day, like also if you ask what's the number one kind of question or number one risk for an international venture capital investor investing in Latvia or any of our neighbors, and it's very interesting, the example that you brought up was Macroeconomics and the talent. I guarantee you that any investment committee in the world that's looking at investing in a business in Baltics, the number one question that the investment committee will be looking at is there enough local capital? Or is there enough local human capital? That's the number one question that any venture capital investor will ask in their investment committees. And again, so we need success stories, because one success story breeds the next success story that gives you the experience to build the next company and the next and the next. And so your example was spot on, and that's kind of the risk that venture capital investors perceive with us as a country, is there enough local talent to build $1 billion company?
Agate, in the previous presentation that Director Jāgera made, she talked about Latvia as gateway to Europe. This is a concept that Fred and I also heard a lot last summer when we had an investor delegation here from California. So building on this concept of maybe Latvia needs to package itself regionally, what about this idea of Latvia or the Baltics as a gateway to the European market? 450 million inhabitants, 450 million potential customers, but then also this human capital dimension. Have you heard this argument before, and does it work for you, or does it work for your colleagues?
It does, and I think it works because also today I'm based in Stockholm, and Stockholm has also been, or Sweden in general, has been recognized as kind of the tech billion-dollar company factory. Think Spotify, Klarna, iZettle, so many companies. And Sweden is also just a country of 10 million people and has produced these global mega success stories. And sometimes like people try to unpack why has Sweden been so successful in building these globally dominating tech companies. And it always comes back to that Swedish founders think global day one because the local market is not big enough. And I would apply exactly the same to the Latvian or the Baltic founder, is that's an edge where if you want to build a $1 billion company, you have to think global day one. You don't have the luxury of not thinking global. And I think that's a huge, huge edge.
Yeah, we're coming back to Jirts, your mantra. I mean, we're hearing more and more that it's a really well-chosen mantra. Think globally.
I think we've discovered here and elaborated exactly why it is Baltic roots and global ambition and not specifically Latvian roots. And that was actually part of the thinking. It's the region that matters and it's attractive. And all those qualities that I mentioned, they're applicable across the region. So Baltic roots, global ambition. If you believe in that thesis, definitely let's talk and let's see what we can do to advance that.
On Baltic roots, I have to add one comment. One of what I think is the best Latvian investor in technology, I don't know if he's here, Andris Beris in Change Ventures. I once talked to him, and us as early stage venture capital investors, we really invest in people. Diana, on the previous panel, was talking about investing in management teams. She invests in later stage companies. I invest oftentimes just on a pitch deck. Like it's a pitch deck, the company doesn't exist, and you're really banking on the individual to build a company. And in the venture capital world, you're always looking for extreme characters. You're looking for characters that really have something to prove in life and that have something to prove to the world. Oftentimes, that inner motivation comes from personal stories, family. But as Andris once told me, is that Every single Latvian has that DNA because we're a really small country. We want to be taken seriously and we want to prove to the world that yes, we can build huge companies. So I really think that the Latvian founder has the right DNA because we really want to prove the world that we can really build global companies out of here. And I think that fire and motivation is serving the Latvian founder really well.
Absolutely.
Real quick
and
here.
we're gritty, right? And we're
Yes.
frugal, and we're good with capital, and it goes a long way here. So these are definitely things that
Well,
are
on this notion of
attractive.
global ambition, I mean, Gunta, Madara is one of Latvia's top exporters. And as I mentioned in my introduction, your market reach is over 45 countries worldwide. Maybe for our entrepreneurs in the audience who are maybe aspiring to one day become the next Madara, can you share maybe a little bit in Madara's 20-year history, you know, maybe were there some key decisions that you made that helped get you to that place where you are today? Walk us through that global ambition that has led to Madara's success.
So just for a reference, I'm with the company for 2 years. So
I'm
when
testing
I talk
you.
I talk philosophical us as a company. So it's 20 years next year, Madara is celebrating. And I guess 20 years ago, when a handful of youngsters decided we are going to have a startup in producing cosmetics, conversations must have been completely different than they are now for startups. Starting from Latvia was not part of the EU, there was still a local currency, no single market regulation that is currently available. Even with the rise of print of demand, 20 years ago, you would not even start and think discussion about producing a single unit. You would have to produce minimum 10,000 batch to even start with. But when talking with Lotte and Uldis, two of the co-founders, what they said that 20 years ago, there was already that ambition that we are going to build something from day one that is going to be global. And I think now looking back, and here I do a bit of talking maybe on their behalf, but if I have to iterate what are those two success maybe verticals is number one, from day one, it has been a decision that we fully own product innovation and R&D, and I'm talking both technology-wise, but then also formulation-wise, which is core at the essence what we do. And this has been, I think, throughout the years, really strategic decision, just let alone over the last course of 5-6 years, there has been attraction of EU funds really to finance purchase of new technology, but then also building together in collaboration with local scientists, Latvian University, really science-based formulations that kick conventional competitors and really match product-wise. So this has been really, really crucial because, and I think this is one of the success factors where the company really has stayed for 20 years and grown for 20 years and will continue to do so in the upcoming decades. It's product-driven innovation, so this is crucial. And number two, just coming back, we are going to be global from day one thinking. It put the e-commerce as the vertical to discuss in the stages already when the e-commerce was not on the table. So everybody talked about e-commerce, I think, like, again, COVID spiraled that conversation. But for Madara, that has been already the platform and topic of conversation. So again, coming back to strategic investments, building really advanced e-com platform, continuously investing in that. And if I look at asset depreciation, it's one of the biggest assets we are having. But then also coming back to competencies, it's building really a team that can globally scale a brand from here across multiple channels. And this has really pivoted how we enter markets. So it's no longer through making agreement with a distributor or trying to enter a specific chain to unlock the market. So recent cases of Spain, we unlock Spain and conversations with physical retailer through being successful on e-commerce. So I think that has been really a pivotal thing to, already in early stages, decide that e-com is going to be a central part of what we do, and it's proven.
So if I could
the right
paraphrase
choice.
you, kind of some of the things I heard was back again to global ambition. Your Madara was ambitious from day one with big picture ideas. It was being forward thinking in terms of innovating on the e-commerce side, something that was very much in its early stages anywhere in the world. And then it was back to this human dimension, building a strong team. So, Girts, I mean, I think you hit the lottery ticket here with your mantra. We keep coming back to the value of the local roots, the strong team, building, leveraging the local talents, but then thinking big about the global picture and having ambitious goals. If we kind of look more forward thinking now to the future in terms of what can we do better? I mean, we heard from Mr. Kazaks that Latvia needs to do better. We can do better. I'm curious to hear your perspectives on what are those things that we should be focusing on to make Latvia more attractive as an investment destination, to make Latvia a more successful exporter. We heard some mentions of the Foreign Investors Council in Latvia recent investment sentiment index from 2024. They identified 4 priority areas for Latvia's policymakers: defense, availability of labor, investment incentives, and education and requalification. For the whole panel, do you agree with this list, or perhaps are there things that you would add to these priorities for the future? Freddie?
I would say that incentives is definitely one thing that would really help. It's actually interesting for me. It was even quite shocking when, together with the Minister of Finance, we pitched for AMLA, which is an anti-money laundering agency, which is a European agency. So it's financed by us, basically, by taxpayers, but and we were competing with other cities, and I was very much surprised that a lot of those cities were putting millions and millions in their offers, like, we're going to cover your rent for 10 years, this kind of things, which is, to me, sounds a bit absurd when it comes to government institutions. But that being said, that we also face investors that are quite straightforward, asking, okay, I'm going to bring 1,000 jobs. How many are you going to pay me for each job created? That's not, let's put it this way, that's not something that will dramatically change the picture. If let's say, if we go back to the talent would still be number one. This was something that would help that, but it's something that investors are looking to.
Anyone else on the panel? What else could we be focusing on, or perhaps Fissel's priority list was spot on?
I could add on, I think it adds to certain topics, but it's definitely deregulation. And I think coming from the industry, which is, I previously worked in the food and medical food industry, which was highly regulated, but then I'm coming now on the stage representing Madera, which is cosmetics industry. And we still, despite the fact that we are talking about single market regulation, in reality, it's not the case. And we still, and I'm talking here maybe about specific business examples, but I think those most likely span across multiple conversations in multiple industries, and I've heard that in multiple planners and sessions. We have to deregulate to really be smooth flowing and streamlining both investments and operations on a daily basis, and really be able to scale. So I think regulation is a big conversation we have to.
Thank you. Agathe?
From my perspective, generally, when I think about the economy, we are a small country and we can't really change that. That's a given. So I think in the future, we're never going to win the volume game. And by volume game, I mean is that it's fantastic that we have strong export driving in companies, and Madera is one fantastic example of that. At the same time, as a small country, where we can create kind of the most bang for the buck is the high value add industries. It's also what the previous panel talked about, and again, I'm of course biased coming from technology background, being a technology investor, but these are the companies where you can, as a small country, build $1 billion companies, and we have our, again, going back to our neighbors, Estonia, that have now done it 10 times over. And so out of those priority areas that you mentioned, the one that resonates most with me is that investment incentives, because in the only way how to create a thriving startup ecosystem, how to create local success stories, there needs to be more capital that's willing to go into these to these companies, and we also have to let companies fail. Like, I think as a country, we have to learn that failure is okay. Again, when I think about it, with a venture capital investor hat on, our typical assumption is that on a portfolio basis, on a fund basis, 50% of the companies that we invest in will fail, will be complete zeros. 25% will maybe do okay, you know, they'll return our capital and maybe a little bit, but then it's the top 25% that is going to drive all the returns for the fund, because those will become the outlier success stories. And that's kind of how we also need to more think about startup ecosystem, grants, startup funding. It's this like, we need to allocate capital. We shouldn't worry if we see the first failures. It takes its time. It takes its time until we get it right. But capital and startup ecosystem is extremely, extremely important in creating these high value add industries.
But on this dimension, this last dimension about being prepared or willing to fail and learn, hopefully, from your mistakes, does that need to come from the investor side, or is that more from the entrepreneurs themselves in terms of changing the mentality here, changing the culture here, or is that education that needs to be coming from external?
It's a very good question. I think it's more from the capital side, because really capital needs to take risks. There needs to be risk-taking capital, but the only way you can really afford to take risk if you know that failure is part of that equation. For any founder out there, failure is not an option, in a way, even when they end up failing. But it's that kind of drive and fire that really builds these successful companies, where founders are fighting every single day because they do not want to accept failure.
You've scaled many startups, and I'm curious, what's your perspective on this kind of willingness to fail mentality, or the need for, perhaps?
It's part of the game. As an investor, you take that on. It's a given that, you know, a lot of them will go to zero, and that's part of the journey. But you know, before I go to what can we do better, I actually wanted to kind of quickly acknowledge how far we've come, and that too comes from a personal story. You know, I have friends here, family. I keep visiting over the years, and I can tell you, like 15 years ago, there was just nothing for a founder. There was no infrastructure, there's no capital. Some friends of mine were trying to start startups, and all they could get was bank loans with, you know, putting up their houses. So we've come really, really far on that front. There's many venture capital funds, there's infrastructure, like I mentioned, the regulatory environment, hundreds of startups. So I think we should also kind of remind ourselves that we've come a long way. That's one. Two, I find myself agreeing with you all the time. I think we're really on the same wavelength. And that's on being special, right? I totally agree. We're not going to win the volume game. We're not going to be the cheapest solution. We're going to be the best solution. We're going to be the most innovative solution. I think Aerones is a great example. They're not a clean tech company. They're a category-defining company. So I think that's kind of our way, the Baltic way, to create great successful companies, is to be really specialized, high value added, very technical, very expert. So I think that's the way to go, and that's just not me saying it, but it's kind of the environment drives that. Like, that's our context in the world. We're a small country, and that's what we need to be to be successful.
On this topic of specialization, are there sectors here in Latvia, Girts, that really jump out at you as being really ripe for opportunity or ripe for investment? I mean, we mentioned software as a service.
I'm going to be
as a
biased
focus for you.
I'm in software.
Right, in addition to software as a service.
Everything I do is software, so that's going to be my top of my mind. You know, within that, there's AI, and you know, but there's other, you know, there's robotics, and anything that is highly specialized is going to be a good place to be.
Agat, that we often hear of Latvia being presented as an opportunity for green investment. With your fund being climate focused, does this register with you, and do you see that opportunity here in Latvia, this green specialization?
I really do. I really do. I think Latvia has a really good chance at also being probably, you know, if we want to play the competition game out of the Baltics, we have a good chance of being the leaders in clean tech and green tech innovation technologies. Latvia is well positioned to innovate and drive renewable energy innovation. And secondly, also the talent base in terms of both engineering talent, but also environmental sciences talent is very, very strong, producing coming out of the Latvian universities. So yeah, in short, yes, I do believe that Latvia could win the green technology game.
Fred, are there certain sectors that you're pitching harder than others as far as being particularly attractive here in Latvia?
Well, since many of us here started discussing startups, I think that's also a topic to touch from city perspective. I think in about 3 years we established quite good cooperation with the sector, and we developed a few of the support programs to help grow the sector. One of the areas is that we run 2 programs which are financing incubators and accelerators. Another one, and this mostly thanks to Andris Kaberziņš and the team to creating the startup house, but also from city perspective, we could finance almost €500,000 in 3 years to support that. I think that's an important place, because it's not just a co-working space, it's a sort of a center of excellence, and we see experiences in Helsinki and other cities where we have that really helps also to attract investment to those organizations. And then the third part which we did is around talent. So we run 2 programs. One is for bringing high-skilled talent from other countries. Let's say if you're a startup and you lack someone in Riga, but you have the person somewhere else, you can receive, I believe, up to €4,500 per employee for bringing them here. And also, equally important, we launched a program for diaspora. If you are a member of diaspora and decide to move back to Riga, you can get compensated your cost up to €2,000, I believe. And that's something that receives individual.
Thank you. Gunta, I know that one of Latvia's other success stories, the Draugiem Group, with their success has kind of invested in and fostered growth of other startups and kind of invested in certain sectors. Is Madara doing anything like that? You mentioned R&D in-house, but are you taking some of your success and trying to encourage growth elsewhere in the Latvian economy, perhaps through partnerships?
For the matter of fact, we are. Last year, it was a management buyout deal for the purpose, because we are listed the company, which puts a restraint on any, let's say, smaller startups that we do. But last year, there was a management buyout for a company internally called Selfname, which is actually a print-on-demand. So again, coming back to softwares and a competition to Superfull to some extent, but we are friends. I know both Kristaps and Mārtiņš Lasmans. But that was a startup that originally was born under the roof of Madara, inspired by the fact what I mentioned earlier, that you could not enter cosmetics industry without committing to a 10,000 minimum production batch. So that's print on demand for cosmetics business. So that has been successfully bought out by management now, and is now, as far as I know, already opened its operation base in US, is fully now operating also from US. So that's just one example. And there are a couple of other ideas being born at the moment under the roof of Madara, which I can't share more at this point, again, due to the publicly listed status. But I think this concept of always thinking what's else besides, let's say, doing Madara and producing products under Madara brand, it has always been there since day one.
I think we had this comment in the previous panel, the need to be agile, constantly moving. We cannot sit on our laurels. I think that comes up here as well. Well, with the last kind of few minutes that we have, I want to slowly start to wrap up and perhaps summarize some of the things that I've heard. I heard that there is tremendous interest and potential here from an investor standpoint, but we may need to think about how we package that opportunity, whether we're talking about Latvia as an investment destination or the Baltics as an investment destination. We certainly have an advantage perhaps in the specialized skill sets that we have and the innovative thinking, but it's very specific, and we need to identify those sectors and really perhaps promote them. There are areas needed, for improvement. Human capital continually comes up. Maybe just to wrap up, we had this ambitious goal. We just heard this ambitious goal of achieving $1 billion in foreign investment. I think it was by the end of 2025. We're already halfway through. Maybe that's a little too ambitious, but hey, why not? Let's try it. In 2 or 3 words, what's the number one thing that we need to do to achieve that $1 billion investment? Jirts.
Wow. Working on it.
Isn't that a single phone call? Isn't that a single phone call for you in Silicon Valley?
Let's see. One thing that I may not answer directly that question, but goes back to something you did ask about, and that's something I have been thinking about a lot, being in the U.S. on the West Coast. The idea of the branding and packaging, that's also been a topic here. Really thinking about a little bit more in those regional terms. I think there's a lot of efficiency that comes from it and a lot more bang from it. So coming to the US, for example, for these follow-on investments that we're talking about, coming more from the perspective of, here we are, the Baltic startups, I think that will bring us a lot more attention and ultimately success.
Thank you. Angad?
I'll be very short. The easiest way to get venture capital money into any company or into any country is by starting AI companies. So let's start more AI companies in Latvia.
Thank you.
I have one more.
Uh-oh.
That's revenue.
Okay.
Come with revenue, you'll get investment, no problems.
Thank you. Gunther?
You stole my answer. I think it's really just, literally one sentence. It's how to build more AI from day one companies that are AI business models based in AI.
How convenient that Latvia is building an national AI center, right?
Yep.
Freddy?
From as an investment agency, I would say if you want to sell something for 1 billion euros, we need to build a pipeline of potential investors for 20 and 30 billion euros for them to convert to being one. And in order to do that, I believe that both Latvian investment agency and Riga investment agency need a bigger sales capacity. We just need to put more effort, more people out there in the world.
In terms of a sales team, if you will.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Well, please join me in thanking our panel participants, and thank you for your attention.
Okay, and as the panel leave, thank you, Martin, for the moderation. I have a couple more of my instructions coming up. I'm sure you're all enjoying these. So the first thing is to remember that after the lunch break, we break up into these breakout groups. There are 4 different options to choose from. Energy, which is in conference room A, defense in conference room B and C, startups in conference room C as well. B, okay, you'll work it out. And human capital will be here. And the thing to remember is that the translation facility from English to Latvian will work in here, but it won't work in the other groups. So please bear that in mind if that's relevant to you. And now, if you follow our wonderful teams to the Klīversala restaurant, which is sort of at the far end of the library, lunch will be served there. And remember, the groups start at 13 o'clock, that's 1 p.m. sharp, right? We were a bit sloppy returning to this one. Let's tighten up for the 1 p.m. sessions. Okay, and see you then.